Chapter 22. The village in the remote mountain valley was quiet and peaceful, far away from the hustle and bustle of the city. It was like a paradise, and even the pace of time was slow. The morning in the village was comfortable and tranquil, and the birds on the branches made crisp and melodious chirping sounds. A group of children suddenly rushed out of the alley, breaking the silence, and the village suddenly became lively and lively. They ran in the same direction happily, and before they reached their destination, the children's voices were excitedly shouting a name. 1-1. 1-1. After a while, more than 10 children all stood at the gate of a farmhouse. They stretched their necks and shouted, 1-1. Come out quickly. 1-1. Not long after, a little fatty came out from behind the gate. At that moment, it seemed that all the light was poured on him. Tuanzi's big black grape-like eyes were bright and spirited. Her eyelashes were long and curly, and her skin was snow-white. Her small hands and feet were chubby, and the baby fat on her face made people want to pinch and poke to see if it was as good as imagined. As soon as the little fatty came out, he was surrounded by a group of children of different heights. 1-1, let's go and play. 1-1, play with us. 1-1, let's play hide and seek today. 1-1, more than 2 years passed by leisurely. Adults may feel that years passed in the blink of an eye, and there was no change except for the increase in age. The passage of time was very obvious in children. The little mythological beast changed from a mollusk to a reptile, to a toddler learning to walk with its short legs, and to a fast runner. It only took 2 or 3 years. This cute and adorable dumpling was Fu Wen. Chi-Wen admitted that Fu Yun had given him the name, but he was only willing to admit half of it. He thought that his name was Fu Wen, not Fu Wenwen. This name was not in line with his handsome face when he grew up. If the haters in his previous life knew about it, they would definitely laugh their heads off. Therefore, Fu Wen insisted that his name was Fu Wen. However, these children called him Wenwen all day long. He didn't correct them one by one, so he just let them be. Wenwen looked up at the group of children who were quarreling with each other in order to play with her. She sighed sadly in her heart. Being too popular was also a kind of trouble. At this moment, a soft and small hand quietly reached out and grabbed his hand. Wenwen turned his head and looked over. The little girl, who was a head taller than him, gave him an adorable smile. The 5-year-old Dian Dian said softly, Wenwen, let's play house. I'll be the mother, and you'll be the baby. A tanned little fatty squeezed over and said loudly, Wenwen won't play house with you girls. Wenwen wants to play Japanese with us. Dian Dian was startled by the loud voice and looked at the little fatty timidly. Then, it looked at Wenwen with tears in its eyes. The 6-year-old girl, shouted back, Wenwen doesn't play your game. It's not fun at all. It's not fun to play house. None of your games are fun. Wenwen, let's go catch some fish and shrimp. We'll give the fish and shrimp we catch to Sister Ruoruo and make porridge. Hearing this, Fu Wen was a little moved. The streams and rivers here had not been polluted by industry, so the fish and shrimp they caught were edible. After washing them, they were placed in a pot with rice and cooked with some ginger and oil. The result was a pot of fragrant fish and shrimp porridge. The group of children who wished they could pierce through the sky often climbed trees to catch birds and eggs, went down to the river to catch fish, shrimp, loaches, and snails. Whenever they found something new, they would bring it all to the Fu family and gather there to eat. However, the new year had just passed, and the weather was still a little cold. The adults wouldn't let the children go into the water, so they could only dream about it. Wenwen didn't want his mother to worry, so he could only express his regret. They were still quarreling, and there was no decision for a long time. Stop quarreling. The cute little voice didn't have any power, but as soon as the voice came out, the quarreling children instantly quieted down and looked at the snowy little ball, waiting for him to make a choice. Wen said in a voice that he thought was cool, but was actually cute, "I don't play these childish games." The children, ranging from 4 to 12 years old, all looked at Wen. Then, little Shirtu blinked and asked foolishly, "Then are we going to play a hero game?" "No." Wen said seriously, "Today we're going to play the Emperor game. I want to be the Emperor. I want to be the Empress Dowager." Dian was the first to respond. She was quite cautious and wanted to be the mother of her favorite Wen. Yi hesitated and thought of the most impressive character in the TV series, "Then I want to be the Empress." The group of children originally liked to watch cartoons, but Wen liked to watch TV shows that adults like to watch, so they gave up their favorite cartoons and accompanied Wen to watch TV shows. A few days ago, they watched a TV series about the Emperor, so they all wanted to play the character that left a deep impression on them. "I want to be the Prime Minister. I want to be an official. Being an official is not an official position. Then I want to be a treacherous official." Little Shirtu saw that his friends had chosen the character they wanted to play, so he said, Then I want to be a concubine." Yi said, "You're a boy, so you can't be a beloved concubine." Little Shirtu felt wronged. "Why not?" Yi tilted her head. She didn't know why, but the concubines in the TV series were all girls. She said, "You can't be one." Little Shirtu's eyes suddenly became teary. He looked at Wen and choked with sobs. "I want to be the person closest to Wen." However, the girl refused to let him mix into the group of girls. Little Shirtu's tears were about to fall, but Wen said seriously, "Then I'll make you my head of internal affairs. That's the person I trust the most." When little Shirtu heard this, he immediately smiled through his tears. "Okay, I want to be the head of internal affairs." The children were assigned their roles and crowded around Wen as they left the courtyard. Wen assigned them lines according to their roles. No matter the age of the children, they all tried to remember the lines of the roles they were going to play and the order of appearance. Not long after, under Wen's guidance, a treacherous officialdom reappeared. However, under the children's affectionate acting, there was no feeling of fighting and scheming or fighting in the harem. The adults passing by laughed every time they saw it. The children's serious and childish voices said the lines of the fight between the harem and the officials. It was really too funny. However, the children felt that they were super great. Not only did they remember the lines, but they also cooperated and acted it out. Although each of them only had 1 or 2 short lines, they were still very good at it. Moreover, they automatically added scenes for themselves. For example, the Empress Dowager and the head of internal affairs were competing for favor. For example, the loyal officials, in order to obtain the emperor's favor, had internal strife and almost fought. Wen sat majestically on a small wooden bench prop, the dragon throne. She had a chubby little face and looked at the group of children who were acting so well that she couldn't watch them. She sighed sadly. It was really too difficult for him. Then, she seriously taught them how to play the roles again and again. The group of children played with relish until noon. At the call of the adults, they all prepared to go home for lunch. Zhuang, who was as thin as a black monkey, pulled Wen and swallowed his saliva. "Wen, come to my house for lunch. My family slaughtered a chicken. I'll give you a big drumstick to eat." Zhuang's family never mistreated him. They never lacked food and toys. However, he was a premature baby. When he was born, he was thin and small. His family carefully raised him and even named him Zhuang, hoping that he would grow stronger. However, no matter how much he ate, he was still thin and small, like a malnourished child. Little Shirtu also wanted Wen to go to his house, but his family didn't slaughter a chicken in the morning. He didn't want to fall behind and shouted, "Wen, come to my house. I'll ask my grandmother to kill a big rooster for you to eat." At this time, a gentle and smiling female voice interrupted, "Thank you children for the invitation, but Wen has to go home and eat with me." The children looked up and saw a graceful and beautiful figure approaching from afar. Her soft black hair was braided and hung diagonally on the left side of her face. It made her palm-sized face look even more delicate. "Older sister Ruoruo." The children shouted happily. Fu Yun looked at the group of children with a smile and said softly, "My family also made delicious food. Children, come to my house." They looked up at Fu Yun and giggled as they ran away. "No need, older sister Ruoruo." Then, they ran away like a swarm of bees. Fu Yun looked at Wen, whose cheeks were red from playing, and touched his little face. Although he wasn't sweating, it was still hot. "Wen, did you have fun?" Fu Yun asked softly as she held his little hand and walked home. Wen held Fu Yun's hand and unconsciously jumped up and down. Then, he realized that his behavior was too childish and seriously walked with small steps. When he heard Fu Yun's question, he curled his lips and said reservedly, "Just as so." This year's underlings were too difficult to take care of. Although they listened to him most of the time, they occasionally disobeyed him. It was enough to give him a headache. As the king of the children in the village, from the age of 13 to the age of 1, Fu Wen often had this problem. These children are really too difficult to take care of. A little boy who was not even 4 years old said this sentence in an old-fashioned manner. Fu Yun was very amused and didn't expose this duplicitous child. Today was the weekend, and the primary school and kindergarten were on holiday. There were many more children who came to play with Wen than usual, and the little boy was obviously happier. "Mom, have you finished discussing the cooperation?" Fu Wen looked up and asked. He was very worried. Not only did he have to worry about his underlings, but he also had to worry about his mother's career. "It's done, little housekeeper," Fu Yun said with a smile. In 2 years, Fu Yun didn't seem to have changed much. No, there should be changes. The comfortable and peaceful life polished her temperament. During this period of time, Fu Yun's popularity had undergone an earth-shattering change, and she had become a first-tier anchor in the live broadcast circle. Among the orchids that she cultivated with all her heart, the 7th Yi orchid and the 10th star butterfly orchid had bloomed a month ago. The pictures of the blooming orchids attracted widespread attention and spread in the circle. At first, there was some popularity, but it didn't go out of the circle. Later, Fu Yun saw that in the past 2 years, she would take at least 2 photos every day from morning to night. There were about 5,000 photos of each type of orchid. She had an idea and imported these photos into the editor. She spent half a month carefully editing them into a video that was 3 minutes and 38 seconds long. The video started from the seeds of the orchids, to them breaking out of the ground and growing tender buds, to them becoming seedlings, growing buds, and until the flowers bloomed. They swayed, and there were thousands of poses. It was so beautiful that it took people's breath away. People seemed to have witnessed the miracle of life from the video and experienced a visual feast. As for the fans who had participated in the growth process of the orchids from the beginning or midway, they were even more touched. It was like a child that they had painstakingly raised had grown into the most beautiful thing in the world. They were proud and touched, and even shed tears. Fu Yun's video went viral. Not only on the forum, but also in other places, it was reposted again and again. And this hot trend was reposted and commented on by the semi-official and semi-private Lawn E Association official account. Life blooming was the most moving gesture. After that, it went viral. Not long after, it was reposted and liked by other official accounts, pushing her and the video to an even higher peak. The number of views of the video on the forum was as high as billions. Fu Yun's orchids under the lens were full of spiritual energy. The video made from thousands of such lively photos attracted the attention of the world with a stunning gesture. Just like the popular comments with many likes said, the author definitely loved orchids and loved life. I saw everything she loved and was moved by her love. Many netizens also commented that after seeing this video, they, who were originally frustrated, sad, or disappointed in life, slowly calmed down. It was as if they had been healed and had reignited hope. There were also netizens who said that the tinnitus caused by his anxiety disorder had been irritating him for a long time, and it had seriously affected his life. After watching this video, all the anxiety had magically disappeared. His ears no longer heard the irritating noise, but the sound of flowers blooming. Regardless of whether the netizens were telling the truth or not, this video really went viral. Even people who had no interest in flowers were not stingy in admiring the beauty of the flowers. A good piece of work had such charm. Fu Yun's number of fans also instantly broke through the 10 million mark because of this video and rapidly rose. Many passers-by fell into this trap because of this video. Less than 2 days later, a Heavenly Queen was about to release an album. It was an ancient-style xianxia. Coincidentally, the identity of the MV's female lead was an orchid demon. When their team saw this video, they were shocked. Hence, they found Fu Yun herself, hoping to sign a contract for the commercial use of the video and use it in the MV. The Heavenly Queen's team offered very generous conditions. After they discussed with Fu Yun's manager, they quickly finalized the cooperation. Good things came in pairs. At the same time, the Lawn E Association also contacted Fu Yun, wanting to buy the copyright of the video for the association's publicity. The cooperation with the Heavenly Queen was discussed by the manager, and the cooperation with the Lawn E Association was led by Fu Yun personally. The Lawn E Association tried to buy the copyright of this video for the association's publicity. Fu Yun was very supportive of this kind of publicity, but she did not agree to let this video completely become the association's. Moreover, she had already authorized the Heavenly Queen. Fu Yun took out her other video. After she finished the first video, she started to make the second one. Because of her previous experience, her speed was even faster. However, she had not uploaded this video yet. The popularity of the first video had not passed, so the manager felt that it was not the best time to upload it. The Lawn E Association met Fu Yun with another orchid video. After watching the work, it was even more visually stunning than the first one. Especially since it had not appeared in the public before, they immediately decided to use this video as a publicity video. After the two sides agreed on the cooperation plan, Fu Yun would be the publicity ambassador specially hired by the Lawn E Association and use this video to promote the association. The copyright of the video would belong to her, but it would be tagged with the Lawn E Association's tag. The video would appear as a publicity video. After these two collaborations were completed, her fame would also rise to another level. When that time came, as long as she did not court death or make a mistake of principle, her status in the live streaming industry would be unshakable. When Wen heard Fu Yun say that the cooperation was successful, she was very happy. She could not help but grin, revealing her neat and white baby teeth. Mommy is so awesome. Mommy is so awesome. Wen proudly stuck out her little belly. She was indeed his mother. She was so awesome. He was proud of her. Fu Yun was instantly overjoyed. No matter how much fame or money she had, it could not make her happier than Wen's praise. Fu Yun also praised, Wen is also the best. Mommy is the best. Wen is the best. Ha! Chapter 23. The mother and son chatted and laughed as they returned home. Fu Yunruo went to bring out the lunch she had prepared. Wenwen followed behind and went over to help serve the dishes. Fu Yunruo skillfully gave him 2 pairs of chopsticks. Wenwen was still young, so Fu Yunruo did not dare to give him anything that was too heavy or too hot. The mother and son placed the lunch on the dining table. Wenwen climbed onto the baby stool and saw the plate of meat on the table. He was so happy that he squinted his eyes. However, he was not in a hurry to eat. He first picked up 2 pieces of meat for Fu Yunruo before he started to eat. He ate with relish, and his eyes curved into beautiful crescents. Fu Yunruo saw that he was only eating meat and not vegetables, so she picked up some vegetables with her chopsticks and placed them in his exquisite and cute little bowl. Wenwen raised his head and looked at Fu Yunruo with a cute face. He said in a childish voice, "Mommy, I love you." Fu Yunruo tried hard to suppress the corners of her lips that wanted to curl up. She said with a straight face, "Mommy loves you too, but you still have to eat vegetables." Wenwen looked at her innocently with his black and bright eyes. He said coquettishly, "I love Mommy the most." As he said that, he put down his chopsticks and used his chubby little hand to make a little heart. Fu Yunruo almost did not keep a straight face. She looked at his chubby little body and her wavering position became firm again. "If you love me, then eat vegetables." This was too difficult. He was only a 4-year-old child. Why did he have to face such a dilemma? Wenwen glanced at his mother and acted coquettishly. "Mommy, I don't like to eat vegetables." In her previous life, there was no meat to eat in the orphanage. Occasionally, there would be minced meat, but that was during the New Year. Wenwen had been hungry for a long time and had always been greedy for meat. Later on, when he had the means, he basically ate meat every day. If it were not for the fact that he did not gain weight easily, his manager would probably be angered to death by him every day. Therefore, he had never liked to eat vegetables. In fact, eating meat was also very good. Wenwen looked at her with his cute big eyes. Fu Yunruo she could not take it anymore. "No." After Fu Yun swayed, she held her ground with difficulty. She was worried about Wenwen's height. Compared to children of the same age, she was actually half a head shorter. She did not meet the height standards of this age at all. She was extremely worried. She thought that the drugs in her body when she was pregnant with him had affected the child's genes. She used Uncle Guo's connections to bring the child to a private hospital owned by one of his students. After all the tests were done, the child's body was very healthy and there were no problems. The reason for the delayed growth was most likely due to their genes. Some children would indeed develop slower in the early stages. Adults did not need to worry too much about it. They just needed to be nourished as usual. Wenwen, if you're picky about food, you won't grow tall. If you're picky about food, you won't be able to grow up to be an adult in the future. Fu Yun threatened. Wenwen kept saying that he was an adult. If Fu Yun knew that he wanted to grow up the most, she would use this sentence to scare him. Wenwen thought that this woman was becoming more and more childish. He was not a 3-year-old child. How could she deceive him? How could he not grow tall? In the past, when he was young, he did not eat meat for a year. Although he was shorter than his peers before he developed, after he started to develop, his height increased rapidly. Wenwen was not worried at all. He would grow to be a tall man who was 183 meters tall in the future. Now that he ate a lot of meat, he would definitely grow taller in the future. If you don't eat vegetables, you won't grow tall. Look at the second grandfather in the village. When he was young, he was picky about food. He only ate meat and did not eat vegetables. Look, he's not even as tall as me. Fu Yun said seriously. Her 1 68 meters height was not outstanding in the north. It was a very average height. However, in the south, girls were generally petite. This height was considered above average. Moreover, her body proportions were good, making her appear tall and leggy. Really? When one thought of the second grandfather in the village and revealed a hesitant expression. The second grandfather was indeed not tall. He was only 150 meters, of course. Fu Yun vowed solemnly. Have I ever lied to you? Wen thought seriously. Could it be that he grew so fast because he ate too much vegetables when he was young? Wen was not sure. If he ate less vegetables now and did not grow as tall as he did in his previous life, that would not be good. He did not want to be unable to reach 180 meters, so he quickly nodded. I'll eat. Fu Yun's lips curled up slightly. She thought proudly, little boy, your mother is still your mother. After lunch, the mother and son strolled in the courtyard. Wen followed behind Fu Yun with his short legs. Suddenly, his black eyes turned and he ran up to hug Fu Yun's thigh. He looked up and said cutely in a small and cute voice, Mommy, I'm so obedient. Is there a reward? Fu Yun lowered her head and pinched his chubby and smooth little face. Wen, what reward do you want? Mommy, I want to eat braised meat. Fu Yun saw that he had eaten a lot of vegetables today, so she readily agreed. Okay. Wen immediately jumped in joy. Thank you, Mommy. I love Mommy the most. Mwah, the little chubby hand touched his lips and then sent a flying kiss. Fu Yun did not know whether to laugh or cry. This little clever boy. Okay, it's time to take an afternoon nap. Okay, the mother and son happily went into the house and took a good afternoon nap together. After waking up, Wen was called out by a group of children to play. Fu Yun tidied up the house and also went out. Since she wanted to make braised meat, she had to buy more than one type. She needed to buy some meat, such as pig trotters and pig head meat. Fu Yun went to the village entrance and told the uncle at the stall to leave some pig trotters and pig head meat for her in advance. Then, she went to Aunt May's house and told her that she would kill a chicken and a duck tomorrow and ask Uncle May to kill them. Fu Yun did not have time to raise poultry, so Aunt Tua May helped raise a few. The village was big, and every family raised a lot of poultry. It was not a big deal to have a few more. She gave some money as a reward for her hard work. Uncle May and Aunt May relied on the output of the fields all year round. Fu Yun used this opportunity to give them more money. They were not willing to accept it if she gave them money normally. Moreover, she did not know how to kill chickens, so she could only ask Uncle May for help. After Aunt May knew that she wanted braised meat, she agreed without hesitation. Early the next morning, the pork, chicken, and duck meat were all sent over. Fu Yun began to prepare the braised meat. The braised meat that she prepared under the aunt's guidance was preserved very well, and the taste was even more fragrant. Wen had eaten the braised meat made by an aunt in the village last year, and she liked it very much. Fu Yun specially asked the aunt if she could learn from her, and then specially sent a chicken to ask for advice. Fu Yun learned a skill, and because it was not good for children to eat too much strong food, she made it lighter. Unexpectedly, the taste was also not bad. However, Fu Yun still tried to make as little as possible. Occasionally, she would make some for Wen to satisfy her cravings. Fu Yun agreed so readily this time, but it had been almost a month. Aunt May had also killed a chicken herself and braised it while she was at it. The old man liked this kind of food. After Fu Yun began to braise the meat, the entire courtyard was filled with the fragrance, and the children were so attracted that they could not move. They did not go out to play, and all of them were in the courtyard, drooling as they smelled the fragrant smell. Dunzi swallowed his saliva and said enviously, Wen, your mother is so amazing. She knows how to cook delicious food. It smells so good. Little Shirtu and the other children nodded in agreement, and their eyes were full of envy. Wen proudly stuck out his little belly and said, My mother is the best. He secretly swallowed his saliva. It smelled so good. After the first plate of braised meat was made, Fu Yun took it out and asked Wen to share it with the children. She knew that Wen would not eat alone, so she was not worried that he would eat too much. Sure enough, although Wen was drooling over the fragrant braised meat on the plate, he did not eat it himself. Instead, he looked at the children and tried to keep a straight face. Go wash your hands first. After you're clean, line up from the shortest to the tallest. One by one, each person gets a piece. The children obediently went to wash their hands. After they checked Wen one by one, they lined up from the shortest to the tallest, and Wen gave each person a piece. The children who received their share happily stood at the side and cherished it very much as they ate with relish. In the end, there was only one piece left. Wen raised his head to look at the teenager, Dili, and then lowered his head to look at the piece of meat on the plate. Dili saw this and stammered, How about, I don't eat it. Wen, you can eat it. Dili looked at it a few more times with great reluctance, and then resolutely looked away. Wen said, Here you go. There's more in the kitchen. Dili thought about it and took the meat. Then I'll eat it. Eat. Dili took the last piece of braised meat. Wen held the empty plate, turned his head, and ran into the kitchen with small steps. Mom, I've finished sharing. Fu Yun looked at the empty plate and praised, Wen is the best. Wen said aggrievedly, I didn't get any. Fu Yun was puzzled. She had clearly calculated that each person would get a piece. Perhaps she had miscalculated, or another child had come without her knowledge. It's okay. Mom has more here. As for why she did not suspect that Wen was lying to eat an extra piece, Fu Yun thought that her son was so obedient and would not lie at all. Even if he wanted to eat more meat, he would only ask her for it. Fu Yun picked up a piece with her chopsticks. Wen opened his mouth wide and tried his best to tiptoe. He took the initiative to move closer. The fragrant braised meat entered his mouth. Wen's mouth was full of fragrance. His small mouth wriggled, and he narrowed his eyes happily. Okay, go out and play with the children. Wen tried his best to raise his head to look at the stove. When he saw that there was so much braised meat, although he still wanted to eat more, there was no hurry. These were all his. Wen skipped out of the house in satisfaction. The children ate the meat and went to play happily. With Aunt May's help, Fu Yun finally finished braising all the meat. She looked at the braised food that looked and smelled good, and her heart was filled with a sense of accomplishment. At first, Fu Yun thought that her culinary skills were not good and that she was not suitable to be a food streamer. But now, she realized that she was quite talented. After Fu Yun discovered Wen's foodie nature, she put in a lot of effort to make delicious food for him. She went online to learn how to make food and learned from the aunties in the village who were good at cooking. Her culinary skills improved by leaps and bounds. Whether it was fish, meat, pastries, or desserts, she could make them all delicious. She felt that even if she did not broadcast Lon E in the future, she could still be a food streamer. After Fu Yun left some for Uncle Gua and herself, she distributed the rest to the neighbors, especially Aunt May's family and the auntie who taught her how to prepare the braised food. Therefore, when Wen ran into the kitchen after playing enough, he saw that the kitchen was empty. He was instantly stunned. Where was so much braised meat? Chapter 24. Wen, we're leaving. Fu Yunruo's voice came from outside. Wenwen turned and ran out of the kitchen. Standing in front of the electric scooter, he looked around but did not see anything big. There was only a square item wrapped in a bag in the basket in front of him. He tried his best to smell the fragrance in the air, but unfortunately, the fragrance in the courtyard had not dissipated. He could not smell it. Wenwen looked up and asked Fu Yunruo, "Mom, did you forget to bring something?" Fu Yunruo looked at Wenwen and said strangely, "No, I've brought everything." Wenwen panicked, "Braised meat." Fu Yunruo pointed at the tightly wrapped bag in front of her, "Isn't that it?" When Wenwen heard this, he widened his eyes in disbelief. He had so much braised meat, but there was only so little. Fu Yunruo glanced at Wenwen and knew what he was thinking. She said, "Mom gave it to someone. Your grandpa May likes to eat braised pig head meat with wine. Do you think we should give it to him? Grandma May taught your mom how to braise meat. Do you think we should give it to him?" Also, Fu Yunruo pointed out everything. When Wenwen heard it, he felt that they should give it to him. In this way, he could only keep a little. Wenwen drooped his head. The days when he could eat braised meat to his heart's content had flown away just like that. This was not what he had imagined. Fu Yunruo drove Wenwen back to the flower garden. Uncle Guo saw Wenwen's listless expression and immediately asked, "What's wrong with Wenwen? Was he bullied by a child?" Fu Yunruo smiled and said, "Who would bully him? They're all protecting him. He's unhappy because he didn't eat enough braised meat." Uncle Guo's heart ached when he heard this. "Wenwen, don't be sad. Grandpa Guo will buy braised meat for you to eat." Fu Yunruo lifted the lunchbox. "I made some today, Uncle Guo. You don't have to buy it, and Wenwen can't eat too much." When it came to the child's health, Uncle Guo did not say anything. He quickly held Wenwen's hand and said, "Come, let's go and see how Xiaolanqiao is growing." When Wenwen heard this, she immediately perked up. An orchid. He had raised an orchid himself. Hence, Wenwen and Uncle Guo went to the flower shed while Fu Yun went to the kitchen to start cooking. Wenwen's small steps unconsciously quickened. She quickly ran to his small potted plant and squatted down to look at it. Seeing that the green seedling was in high spirits, he grinned happily. "You're so beautiful." Uncle Guo praised from the side, "Yeah, Wenwen is really amazing." Wenwen was even happier. He looked proudly at Lan Miao, who had finally survived. He knew that his mother was so good at raising orchids. How could he not be able to raise them? Ever since Wenwen learned how to run and jump, he was very sensible and wanted to help the adults. With his small body, he could not use the shovel and other tools that the adults used. He asked his mother to buy a set of small tools for him to dig the soil and plant flowers. But what he did not expect was that the flowers he planted would all die. His mother and Grandpa Guo did not take it to heart. They probably thought that it was already very impressive for a 2- or 3-year-old child not to destroy flowers. How could he know how to raise flowers? But Wenwen felt guilty. He did not know what went wrong, so he decided to focus on raising a flower first. However, one of the orchids he raised died after a few days. No orchid had ever lived for more than 10 days in his hands. Uncle Guo saw that Wenwen had destroyed so many orchids, but he was not angry. Children were very curious about new things and were keen to explore. Wenwen was happy when he suddenly froze. He picked up the small leaves and looked at them strangely. He remembered that he had accidentally pulled off a small section of a leaf 2 days ago. These few leaves were not missing a section. He looked carefully. He was too happy just now and did not notice. Now, the more he looked, the more he felt that this was not the orchid he had raised before. Wenwen raised his little face. "This is not my orchid, Ah. Uncle Guo was at a loss for words. Then, he said with certainty, how can it not be? This is your little orchid. But one of the leaves has a mark. This one doesn't. Wen retorted. Uncle Guo was stunned. What mark? When he saw it, the leaves had already turned yellow. He did not notice it. My orchid is dead, Wen said with certainty. He observed Uncle Guo's expression and came to an answer. Uncle Guo could not find any words to refute, so he said carefully, it's Grandpa Guo's fault. You asked me to take care of the orchid so seriously, but I raised it to death. Uncle Guo took the responsibility himself. In fact, 2 days ago, when Wen's baby solemnly entrusted him to take care of his orchid, he knew at a glance that the orchid would not survive. He tried to save it for 2 days, but in the end, it withered. Uncle Guo was at a loss. Thinking that when Wen was coming back, he quickly found a similar orchid seedling to replace it. He did not expect that Wen would see through him in the end. Uncle Guo coaxed, Wen, it's okay. Let's continue to raise it with this one. Look at how strong this seedling is. It will definitely survive. Wen was shocked again and again. He was in a bad mood. He could not help but doubt himself. Was he poisonous? Otherwise, why would one orchid die after another? Clearly, his mother could raise so many beautiful orchids. He also had a professional like Uncle Guo by his side. He was influenced by him. Shouldn't he be lying down at the end of his life? Wen said listlessly, there's no need. I'd better not spoil Hua Hua. Hua Hua was so cute. It would be heartbreaking if it died under his care. Uncle Guo's heart instantly ached. How can it be spoiling Hua Hua? Wen took care of Hua Hua so seriously. This was all an accident. Next time, you will definitely be able to raise beautiful flowers. No matter how Uncle Guo comforted him, Wen's expression was still listless. When he saw the plate of fragrant braised meat on the table for dinner, his eyes immediately lit up. At the dining table, after Wen ate the stipulated 3 pieces of meat, he said seriously to Fu Yun, Mother, the Hua Hua I raised died. My young heart has been seriously hurt. Can I eat 3 more pieces of meat to comfort my injured heart? Fu Yunhua paid special attention to food and drink. Everything that children could not eat was strictly controlled. Those that could not be eaten more, such as braised meat, were limited to a certain amount at a time. Although Wen was greedy, he enjoyed his mother's concern more. He was keen on fighting a battle of wits and courage just to eat more meat. Fu Yun looked at her son's serious little face. This little guy was simply too desperate for a mouthful of meat. Fu Yun relented and said, You can eat 1 more piece. But if you eat these vegetables, you can eat 1 more piece. Fu Yun was like most mothers now. She had the same worries. Children were picky eaters. They only ate meat and did not like vegetables. They were unwilling to go to kindergarten. They played like mud monkeys rolling in the mud every day. However, when the child looked at you with pure and innocent eyes, took the initiative to kiss you, rubbed your face, and said softly, I love Mother the most. You could not be angry at all. Fu Yun could not figure it out. How cute, obedient, and considerate were they when they were just born. She was often worried that the child would be bullied because he was too quiet when he grew up. Now that she thought about it, she was really naive at that time. It was said that men changed 18 times when they grew up. He was not even old yet, but he had changed so much. Fortunately, she could control this mischievous child. When Wen heard Fu Yun's words, she immediately smiled and said, Deal. Uncle Guo was very happy at the side. He ate the pig head meat that tasted better the more he chewed. Seeing that Wen's food was restricted, he felt that it tasted even better. Fu Yun noticed that Uncle Guo frequently picked up the meat and also reminded him, "Uncle Guo, it's not easy to digest meat if you eat too much at night. Eat less." Now that the weather was hot, even if there was a refrigerator, it was not good to keep the meat for too long. Fu Yun did not keep much meat. At most, she could eat 2 meals. She would cook every once in a while. Every time, the old and young did not stop eating, and she had to watch over them. Uncle Guo, Wen snickered at Uncle Guo. Wen ate 2 more pieces of meat and was happy for the entire night. However, the next day, when he saw the pots of lively orchids and thought of his unfortunately dead orchids, his mood instantly turned bad. He squatted on the ground and held his chubby little face as he sighed sadly. It was too difficult for him. He did not know if his mother would let him eat 2 more pieces of meat to comfort him. Wen slurped his saliva as if he had not had enough. When he thought of the little meat left, he became even more worried. He had so much meat, but there was only a little left. At this moment, Fu Yun was live streaming, and many of the bullet screen comments asked about her child. Fu Yun Ruo shared his interesting story with the audience, causing them to burst into laughter. "My child is really too cute. My heart aches for my child, but I can't help it. Ha ha ha. My child is really a big treasure." The audience loved to hear about the old and the young. Fu Yun also loved to share with the audience. She wanted the whole world to know about her clever, cute, obedient, and sensible, smart son. The number of viewers who firmly occupied the #1 spot on the fan list smashed the sea of flowers again. Fu Yun was used to it and skillfully thanked them. In the past few years, she finally understood that this mysterious nouveau riche was really rich. Every time he appeared, he would definitely smash a sea of flowers. Under Fu Yun's repeated attempts to stop him, he finally restrained himself a little. At most, he would smash 10 flowers at a time. In the eyes of this nouveau riche, 1 million yuan was probably like 100 yuan. He would casually throw it out when he loosened his grip. Fu Yun thought about the unscientific nature of this world. There were many explosive news on the internet about a certain rich 2nd or 3rd generation spending tens of millions just to chase after celebrities. In the live streaming industry, she was not the first person to be rewarded with 1 million yuan. She was making a fuss over nothing. In the living room of a simple but luxurious villa, a tall man was lying lazily on the sofa. He crossed his slender and straight legs, and his ankles protruded from the edge of the sofa. The tips of his toes were occasionally raised. Siyu leaned against the soft pillow and looked at the phone screen horizontally in his hand. The host's pleasant voice was like jade beads falling on a plate. It was very comfortable to listen to. He did not think that he was a voice fetishist, but this voice was not pretentious. It was pleasant to listen to, and it was much more comfortable than those who pretended to be weak and coquettish. When he heard the host say that the flowers raised by the old and young had died again, Siyu felt the same way. He had a better impression of the chubby little boy who appeared on the host's homepage from time to time. He could not help but love the only human child who had mixed in with the group of orchid brothers. He could not raise the flowers alive either. This little boy was just like him. Hence, he started to tip him. After watching the live stream, he clicked on the host's homepage and flipped to the hottest video. On the screen, a leaf orchid emerged from the soil and grew, blooming with fresh flowers. This was the thin leaf orchid of the leaf orchid. The flowers were pure white, and the stamens were light yellow-green. It was simple but elegant. Siyu watched it over and over again. At this moment, a plump middle-aged man walked in quickly. His forehead was covered in sweat. Yuan Axian wiped the sweat off his forehead. Siyu. HM. Siyu responded lazily and teased, why is Yuan Gu so free to come here? Yuan Axian was relieved to see that Siyu was still in the mood to joke around. He discreetly observed Siyu's condition, afraid that something was wrong. I accepted a variety show for you. Upon hearing this, Siyu raised his eyebrows. Great Manager Yuan, are you trying to exploit the masses of poor people? Yuan Axian rolled his eyes unceremoniously. How would I dare to exploit the great best actor Si? You're the one who's exploiting me. Siyu had accepted a drama last year to compete for this year's Triennial International Awards. It was a drama about the many sides of human nature. It took almost a year to film this drama, and every scene was strived to be as realistic as possible. As one of the male leads, Siyu acted as a person with an extremely dark and negative heart. In the end, he lost his life because he tried to show some kindness. The other male lead was a veteran best actor, and his acting skills were superb. The two best actors acted together on the same stage. Yuan Axian was stunned by Siyu's explosive acting skills, especially when they stopped filming. Yuan Axian looked at Siyu, who seemed to still be in the dark and gloomy mood, and felt worried. At the end of the scene, the unreadable look in Siyu's eyes was even more heartbreaking. It had been 10 days since the filming of the drama ended. Siyu had been staying at home to adjust his state of mind. Yuan Axian came over every 2 to 3 days, afraid that Siyu would be too immersed in the role and not be able to get out of it. This time, he came with a mission. This was the first time he had accepted an invitation to a variety show without Siyu's approval. This show is relaxing. It's a good chance to relax. Yuan Axian explained the content of the show to him. Siyu gave Yuan Axian a sideways glance, but did not say anything. Yuan Axian tried his best, but Siyu still did not say anything. Yuan Axian had no choice but to use his trump card. The location of the show is Qi Weiqing's teacher's hometown. You can pay him a visit. Siyu's eyes lit up when he heard this, but he still said reservedly, I'm a flower owner now. He had not seen little 11 for a while, but she was already a budding flower. It would not be long before she would bloom even prettier than little 5. Yuan Axian was speechless. To be honest, he did not understand the mentality of a flower owner. What was there to be proud of? It was not like he had personally raised her. However, he knew better than to say this out loud. It's fine if you don't go. Qi Weiqing wanted to ask you to pay his teacher a visit, but I rejected him. Yuan Axian was about to leave. Siyu said, since your big manager has agreed, how can I not go? Yuan Axian sneered in his heart when he heard this. He spoke as if he could order him to do anything. What a damn man. If this was not the big boss of his boss, he would not have served him. Chapter 25. Wen was shoveling mud with a small shovel. His fair face was stained with mud, but he didn't notice it. With the encouragement of his mother and Grandpa Gua, he regained his confidence and decided to continue planting orchids. He felt that it might be because the environment was not right. He shouldn't have planted it in a flower pot. He should have planted it in the garden. Maybe the orchids he was raising didn't want to be canaries and yearned for the free and vast sky outside. Wen huffed and puffed. He finally planted the flower seedlings. He followed the instructions given by Grandpa Gua and his mother seriously. Then, he watched over it from morning till night. On the first day, it was green and looked very energetic. He was happy. On the second day, it was a little wilted. Maybe it hadn't adapted to the new environment yet. On the third day, the leaves were a little yellow. Wen was anxious. Was it wilting again? On the fourth day, the flower died. Wen squatted in the corner, deep in thought. His chubby face was solemn and he was deep in thought. Why didn't he realize that he had such a physique in his previous life? Maybe it was because he was busy surviving and didn't grow flowers, so he didn't realize it. But this shouldn't be. His mother became a professional and outstanding artist in Lanzhou in just 2 to 3 years. Even Grandpa Guo was very satisfied with his mother. He once praised her in front of him that his mother was the most talented person he had ever seen. Genes could be passed down in reverse. Fu Yun looked at Wen, who seemed to have suffered a huge blow, and she was speechless. She didn't know what to say to comfort him. This time, in order to let Wen successfully grow the orchids, she and Uncle Guo watched from the side. Their operation was clearly correct. Logically speaking, as long as it wasn't too delicate, it should be easy to grow. But why did it just wilt? Could it be that there were really people who were plant insulators? Among her fans, a small number of them seemed to be such people. They said that they couldn't even grow a plant. She thought that it was an exaggeration. Now, she felt that perhaps there really was such a plant killer. Fu Yun finally said, "Baby, are we going back to the village in the afternoon?" When Wen heard that, he immediately stood up and ran over with his short legs. Going back? Isn't that tomorrow? Fu Yun Ruo patted his little head. When we go back today, do you miss the children very much? No. Wen shook her head and said reservedly, just a little. Go and say goodbye to Grandpa. You haven't seen him for 2 days. Now, go and accompany him. Okay. Wen skipped to the flower shed. Fu Yun looked at Wen's lively and cheerful back view. His attention was diverted and he instantly forgot about the orchid grass. If Fu Yun thought about it, children should like to play with adults and children. Should she consider letting him go to kindergarten? Previously, she felt that 3 years old was too young and was not old enough to go to kindergarten. She would consider it again next year. Now that she thought about it, she could send him to kindergarten this September. She didn't know what kind of proof was needed to enroll in kindergarten. Did she need to register her baby? Her baby hadn't registered yet. In the afternoon, Fu Yun and Wen took an afternoon nap before returning to the village. When the children in the village saw Wen return, they were so excited that they jumped around. The little guy was obviously very happy as well. His eyes lit up and he happily went to play with the children. Fu Yun Ruo went to look for Uncle May and Aunt May. When she saw that only Aunt May was at home, she asked, "Where's Uncle May?" Fu Yun Ruo came back early with the child. It was only 3:00. He went to town for a meeting, Aunt May said casually. Uncle May was the village chief and could be considered a grassroots cadre. If there were any instructions from the higher-ups, he would also summon the village chiefs for a meeting. Fu Yun Ruo nodded. Why are you looking for your uncle? I want to ask Uncle May. Wen doesn't have a household registration. If he wants to go to kindergarten, what proof does he need? I know about this. Just ask me, Aunt May said. We're not that strict here. He can go to kindergarten without a household registration. Fu Yun Ruo was relieved when she heard that. That's good. Aunt May couldn't help but say, Ruo, the child's household registration problem has to be solved sooner or later. Even if it doesn't affect his kindergarten, it will affect his primary school and university. I know. However, Fu Yun Ruo didn't know what to do. Her own household registration was still with the Fu family, so she couldn't register the child with her own household registration. Are you going to continue like this? Aunt May said lovingly, young people nowadays all yearn for the big cities outside. They don't want to stay in the mountains for the rest of their lives and live their lives in a daze. You're still young. One day, you'll fly to the outside world. I know you're a good child. You're a phoenix in distress. Our mountain can't keep you. Aunt May saw through it. We all hope that you can face it bravely. Don't be defeated by the wind and rain. If you're tired, this is your last harbor. Fu Yunruo almost cried when she heard that. Although Aunt May didn't ask anything, she knew everything in her heart. She was really lucky to have met Aunt May's family and Uncle Gua. The education resources in the big cities outside are much better than in the mountains, Aunt May said earnestly. Aunt May said earnestly, so, for your own sake and for Wenwen's future, you should make plans early. Fu Yunruo nodded and said solemnly, I'll consider it carefully. She had considered this problem in the past. She knew that even if it was for the sake of her child, she would leave this place and return to the big city one day. After her death 2 years ago, Fu Yunruo still thought about whether she should go out. However, at that time, her career had just started. On one hand, she couldn't bear to let go of her career. On the other hand, she couldn't bear to leave this place. She had a sense of belonging to this place. She had someone she couldn't bear to part with. Furthermore, the baby was still young. It wasn't time for her to make a choice yet, so she had always refused to think about this difficult choice. To her, Uncle Gua was undoubtedly the person who gave her a second life. The knowledge he taught her completely changed the trajectory of her life. He had no children, so she was most worried about him. Even if he had nephews and grandnephews here, if possible, Fu Yunruo wanted to do her best. Even if she had to go out, she wanted Uncle Gua to go with them. She just didn't know if Uncle Gua was willing. She couldn't bear to part with Uncle May and Aunt May. They had their son to take care of them. Fu Yunruo knew that they wouldn't leave their hometown. It's good that you don't mind me talking too much. Fu Yunruo said coquettishly, I know Aunt May is doing this for my own good. This topic was too heavy, so they quickly changed the topic. Didn't the city summon the county leaders for a meeting previously? It seems that some television station is coming to our small place to film some program. I haven't heard of it. Fu Yunruo thought to herself. It was such a new thing, but she didn't seem to have heard anyone discussing it. It's not like they're coming to our place. I heard that there's some confidentiality agreement. They can't talk about it everywhere. As the county next to them had snatched this spot, it was very far away from them. Moreover, the television station had requested that it couldn't be revealed for the time being, so there was basically no gossip here. Then now. Why did they call Uncle May for a meeting again? Fu Yunruo keenly caught the main point. Who knows? The old man has gone to several meetings because of this matter these few days. Aunt May wasn't too sure about the situation at the moment. When she asked the old man, he was very mysterious. She didn't know what he was up to. Fu Yunruo was also quite curious, but Uncle May hadn't returned yet. She sat for a while more before going back to cook dinner. At night, Fu Yunruo brought her son to the May family. Before May, the weather had already begun to warm up. It was as if they had just woken up and stepped into summer. It was still cold at night. The children were all wearing long sleeves and running around the village. As Wenwen had to accompany Grandpa May and Grandma May, he didn't run around with his friends. Fu Yunruo was also worried. If he ran into a dark place and accidentally bumped into something, her heart would ache. The children ran around Fu Yunruo and her son, laughing and laughing. It wasn't until they entered the May family's house that the children laughed and dispersed. Uncle May and Aunt May were very happy that the mother and son had arrived. They hurriedly invited them to sit down and brought them food. Uncle May and his wife asked about Wenwen's well-being for a while before they talked about the topic they had talked about during the day. This spot has been given to our county. Uncle May's tone was very happy. Aunt May said strangely, what? This spot can still be changed. Uncle May took a sip of tea and kept them in suspense before he said leisurely, I heard that this spot was given to that side because the leader there used his connections. However, it was said that when the television station came to inspect, the leader's brother-in-law also accompanied them. He drank too much during the meal and offended the television station. Uncle May's tone was subtle. He never expected that such a good thing would happen to them in such a way. When Fu Yunruo heard Uncle May's words, she couldn't help but think. Which television station and which program was it? She tried to recall the plot of the book she had read before. If the name of her former hometown appeared, she would definitely have a deep impression of it. On second thought, this was the end of the story in the book. In the first book, not long after the original owner died, Fu Yun's father received the news and was unable to hold on. He was bedridden. The female lead rejected the male lead's marriage proposal again and again because of this. Later, Fu Yun's father was bedridden for more than 2 years and unfortunately passed away. Feng Shuiruo and her mother struggled to support the Fu family. Half a year later, an accident happened, and Feng Shuiruo had no choice but to get married. After that, it ended with a wedding of the century. The second book started when her daughter was 18 years old. The years in the middle were not within the scope of the book's plot. Fu Yunruo had checked and found that because her ending changed, the trajectories of other people also changed. Fu Yun's father did not show any signs of being seriously ill. From time to time, he would appear in public in high spirits. At this point in time, there was no description of Feng Shuiruo participating in any variety show. Therefore, this should be a program that was not popular. Fu Yunruo did not take this matter to heart. Wen sat on Fu Yunruo's lap and swung her little legs from time to time. When she heard that the television station was going to film a program here, she immediately pricked up her ears and listened carefully. Which television station is it? Wen looked up and asked. Uncle May immediately said, Star TV station. Wen was deep in thought. Star TV station had already declined when he was in the entertainment industry. At this time, it should still be considered a little famous. Wen and Fu Yunruo were the same. They did not take it to heart, so they were also curious about which celebrities would be there. Anyway, even if he wanted to enter the entertainment industry in the future, it would be many years later. He was still a child now, so he had to enjoy the rights of a child. When Aunt May heard Uncle May's words, she immediately patted her thigh happily. Then, won't we be able to see a big star? Can we see Feng Er? Feng Er was the female lead of the most famous TV drama when they were young. She was still an active actress on the screen, but she usually played the role of a mother or grandmother. People of their age still liked to call her by the name of Feng Er in the role. Maybe. Uncle May was not too sure. I didn't expect that at my age, I could still learn to be fashionable. This is called chasing after celebrities, right? Aunt May smiled like a flower. Don't be happy too early. Uncle May said, there are so many towns in the county. They might not necessarily come to our place. It's not far to go to the other towns. Aunt May did not care at all. When the time comes, us old sisters will charter a car and go there directly. It won't take long. You old woman. Uncle May did not say anything in the end. In fact, he also wanted to take a look. Feng Er was not only the idol of these women when they were young, but also the idol of these men when they were young. However, he could not say it out loud. Otherwise, the old woman would definitely say that he was ugly and mischievous. How could he covet the goddess? Fu Yunruo looked at Uncle May and Aunt May and thought that they were really cute fans. Looking at the way the two of them interacted, she was envious in her heart. She did not know if she would be able to meet such a person who would accompany her for the rest of her life. Chapter 26. Fu Yun didn't live stream when she lived in the village. She had maintained this habit since half a year ago. Of course, because the two places were close, she would sometimes finish her live stream in the morning and go back after lunch. She wasn't idle in the village either. Sometimes she would tidy up the yard a little and connect with the neighbors. It was said that distant relatives were not as good as close neighbors. Neighbors also had to interact frequently with each other so that their relationship wouldn't fade. Other than that, she had to deal with a lot of work matters. Now that Fu Yun's fame was at its peak, the platform arranged an assistant for Fu Yun after she became an A-lister. With her popularity, there were more things that came with it. Although the platform had a specialized department to help maintain it, Chi Weiqing suggested that she open a studio under the Panda platform. Some people's encounters were just different. If they were destined to be popular, they would be like fish in water no matter where they went. Chi Weiqing thought that she would become popular, but he didn't expect that she would achieve so much through live streaming. To be honest, it was much harder to stand out in the live streaming industry than in the entertainment industry. The number of people who could be considered A-listers in the live streaming industry could be counted with two hands. There were only a few people who were truly A-listers. In the entertainment industry, it was very common for a top celebrity to appear in 1 or 2 years. As for whether they could stabilize their position after they went up, at least 9 out of 10 of them would eventually fall, while one would barely maintain their A-lister position. Not everyone was like CU. In the past 10 years, only CU was an A-lister. After a movie became a top celebrity, not only did he not fall, but he also rose higher and higher. Others could only look up to him. At this time, it didn't matter if Fu Yun was in the entertainment industry or not. Chi Weiqing had already dispelled this idea. He suggested that Fu Yun set up her own studio. This would be beneficial for her future career development. This live stream was also very positive. Fu Yun also became the successor of the Orchid Arts Association. People who didn't understand this industry might not know. Tracing back, the discovery and maintenance of orchids predated the birth of writing. In later historical development, orchids became a symbol of literati and a symbol of spirituality. Even now, they were still sought after. The history of orchids could be said to have run through human history. In recent times, due to the extensive destruction of orchids, which almost led to their extinction, the country listed wild orchids in the protection law. Although law on E was a relatively unpopular knowledge nowadays, if one had the luck, it would be impossible for it not to become popular. It was like one of the pillars of a live broadcast. It was a food broadcast. Every time it was broadcasted, there would be millions of people watching it online. Fu Yun was also considering the matter of the studio. After she became famous, there were more things to do. She needed a professional team to help her deal with her work. Chi Weiqing had given her a lot of useful suggestions. If Fu Yun had accepted all of them, she would have definitely invited Chi Weiqing to her studio if it wasn't for the fact that Chi Weiqing had no intention of changing jobs. Fortunately, Tian, the assistant that the platform had arranged for her in the live stream room, was very capable. Over the past few years, she had helped her manage the live stream room in an orderly manner. Their temperaments were also compatible, so she did not need to find someone else to manage it. Fu Yun Ruo and Tian finalized the regulations of the studio before ending the video call. A year ago, Tian had specially come to meet her during the holidays. After meeting each other, they had a good impression of each other. Their worldviews were also compatible, so they were now good friends and often video called each other. Fu Yun Ruo turned off her computer, stretched, stood up, and walked out. She did not know where the little guy had run off to play. Fu Yunruo looked around and then went to Aunt May's house. Aunt May's house was currently bustling with noise and excitement. A group of women were sitting there and chatting. When they saw Fu Yunruo, they hurriedly waved for her to come over. Fu Yunruo smiled and said, "Aunties, what are you talking about? Why is it so lively?" "We're talking about the TV station. Yes, our town is also within their filming range. I heard that they'll even come to our village. Sigh, I don't know if those big celebrities are as good-looking as our Ruo. Definitely not. I've never seen a girl more beautiful than Ruo on TV." These words caused a wave of agreement. Fu Yunruo waved her hand. "How can I compare to a celebrity?" She felt that their filter was too thick and then asked, "Will our village be coming too?" "Yes. The news has spread in the town. I heard that the TV station will donate to the local. No wonder if so many people are fighting over it. Then won't we be able to get a share of the money?" "No way, it's for charity." Fu Yunruo listened to their discussion and heard the word donation. Her heart skipped a beat. Back then, after she had earned a certain amount of savings, she had also suggested to Aunt May to donate some money to do something for the village. However, Aunt May had rejected her suggestion. Although most of the people in the village were simple and honest, if they knew that you had a lot of money in your hands, it was inevitable that they would be jealous. They were orphans and widows, so it was even easier for them to be targeted. It was fine to do good deeds, but they could not put themselves in danger because of doing good deeds. It was difficult to hide secrets in a small place. Fu Yunruo's donation would undoubtedly tell others that she had a huge sum of money on her. Moreover, the location of this village was not good. Even if they built a road, a few million would only be able to build a section of the road. It was a big project to build all the roads that connected all the villages to the town and outside. Fu Yunruo did not have the funds to support this project. Fu Yunruo dismissed the idea at that time. Now that she thought about it, she might be able to donate in the name of the production team. This way, Aunt May and Uncle May would not have any worries. Aunt May said to Fu Yunruo, "Ruo, our village still has a meeting at 7 p.m. It's on the ground at the entrance of the village. Remember to come then." Fu Yunruo nodded. "Okay. What meeting was there at night?" Fu Yunruo was quite curious. While the adults were chatting, the children were playing in the village. Their childish laughter spread far and wide in the village. Just as they were playing happily, a thin and small child walked over while crying. Behind him was an old man with a helpless expression. When Wenwen saw her little brother crying, she immediately stopped in her tracks and walked over. She said sternly, "Zhuang, why are you crying?" Then, she looked at Zhuang's grandmother suspiciously. Could it be that she had hit Zhuang? Zhuang's grandmother said helplessly, "He was just robbed of a candy. He has been crying until now and insisted on coming to look for you." Zhuang said aggrievedly, "I specially brought that candy back for Wenwen." As he spoke, he opened his mouth and was about to continue crying. "All right, don't cry," Wenwen said with a frown. Zhuang's crying immediately subsided. When Zhuang's grandmother saw this, she said kindly, "Then I'll leave Zhuang to you." Then, she left with a peace of mind. Zhuang was still sobbing. It took Wenwen a while to clarify what had happened. It turned out that Zhuang had gone to town with his grandmother today. His grandmother had bought 2 candies for him. He thought that they were very delicious and specially kept one to bring back for Wenwen to eat. However, on the way, it was snatched by a little tyrant from the neighboring village. He was very tall and strong. Zhuang did not dare to snatch it back and cried all the way back. When Wenwen heard this, he was furious. He said domineeringly, "Just you wait, I'll get back at him for you." How could he sit back and do nothing when his little brother was being bullied? Zhuang Zhuang immediately stopped crying. He looked at Wen Wen with stars in his eyes. At this moment, he felt that Wen Wen's image was extremely great in his eyes. Are we going to fight? Dilly, who had been paying attention to the commotion here, rubbed his palms together when he heard Wen Wen's words. When children played, it was usually the children of the same village who played by themselves. They minded their own business with the children of other villages. Sometimes, they would even fight to occupy the place to play. Of course, most of them would play together. After all, most of their peers who were already in school were in the same class. Therefore, the children knew each other, whether directly or indirectly. Wen Wen said, "How can they be so violent? They were good children. How could they fight? Then, how are we going to get back at them? We have to be polite before resorting to force." Wen Wen's expression was serious. First, we have to talk to them with emotion and then reason. The others were dumbfounded. They did not understand, but they felt that Wen Wen knew a lot. Let's write a letter of challenge first and arrange a time to meet. We'll reason with them first. If they compensate us with the candy and apologize to Zhuang Zhuang, this matter will be over. If they don't agree, then we'll fight. Wen Wen said domineeringly. The other children nodded continuously. They understood. They were waiting for them to return the candy before fighting. Wen Wen was amazing. In the past, when they fought, they would fight as soon as they met. Why would they care about being polite before resorting to force? Thinking back to the past, when they were robbed by the children of the neighboring villages, it would be best if they could get their things back. If they could not, they would only fight so that the other children would not dare to rob them again in the future. Who would have thought that they would have to compensate first? Delete volunteered to write a letter of challenge. He was the oldest in the group of children. He was in the 6th grade of primary school and was the most literate among the children. Delete wrote a letter of challenge and handed it to Wen Wen for review. The words on the letter of challenge were written crookedly. Some words that he did not know were written in pinyin. However, it was still a qualified letter of challenge. They sent a vanguard to deliver the letter of challenge and then arrived at the appointed location at the appointed time. Wen Wen looked around at the number of people on her side. The girls had all rushed back and were not allowed to participate. The main fighting force was the children between the ages of 8 and 10. Not long after, the other side brought more than 10 children. At first glance, the fighting strength of the two sides was about the same. The only biggest difference was the boss that they were escorting. The two armies confronted each other and were clearly separated. On their side, there was a white, short, and chubby child. On the other side, there was a strong, big child who was 1.6 meters tall. Are you the one who bullied my Zhuang Zhuang? Wen Wen tried hard to put her hands on her chubby waist. Although she lost in terms of size, she did not lose in terms of aura. As long as you apologize to my Zhuang Zhuang and compensate us with the candy, we will let bygones be bygones. Big Mountain did not understand the meaning of the last 4 words. However, he did snatch candy. Today, he did snatch candy from a little kid. Big Mountain was the leader of the children in the neighboring village. He was a 12-year-old child and had inherited the position of the previous boss after he graduated from junior high school. He lowered his head and looked at the little kid who did not have any power at all. He was short, small, and cute. She glared at him with her big, round eyes. She looked so cute and fierce. He only felt his heart beating rapidly. Using an idiom to express it, it was a blow to the heart. What an exquisite doll. Are you the boss of the neighboring village? This was the boss who had issued a challenge to him. Wen Wen proudly stuck out her little belly. Yes, that's me. Big Mountain looked at the beautiful little kid not far away and then looked down at his little brother who was of the same height. There was still snot under his nose and dirty chubby hands. After a moment, he lowered his head and lifted the chubby boy by his clothes. He walked to Wen and placed the chubby boy in front of Wen. Wen? Did he feel that it was embarrassing for him to bully the young? Was that why he brought a kid of the same height over to duel with him? The next moment, Big Mountain lifted Wen up and carried him by the waist. He turned around and walked away. Let's exchange. This little kid is yours and I want your boss. Wen, who was being held by the waist with his face down and back up, was confused. All the children. One face was confused. 2 faces were confused. 3 faces were confused. When the children saw that their baby Wen had been kidnapped by the enemy from the neighboring village, they were so angry that they immediately chased after him. Give Wen back. Put Wen down. Big Mountain ran quickly in front with Wen in his arms. He thought to himself, this is the little brother I want. I have to hide him at home as soon as possible. When the children saw that their boss had snatched the other party's little boss and ran away, they also ran with him in confusion. On the other side, the children whose baby Wen had been snatched away screamed and chased after him, wanting to snatch their Wen back. The exchange item, Big Mountain's little brother, Xiao Shan, was left behind. He looked at the group of people running away, leaving him alone with a confused expression. After a moment, there was an earth-shattering cry. "Ah!" Chapter 27. I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. This child is too inconsiderate. In the farmhouse's courtyard, a sturdy woman brought a tall and strong child over and apologized profusely to the charming young woman opposite her. As she spoke, the woman slapped the back of Dashin's head. Hurry up and apologize to your Auntie Ruoruo. Fu Yun's heart clenched when she heard the slap. She hurriedly said, It's okay, it's okay. The child is just playing around. It's a misunderstanding, I'm sorry, Sister Ruoruo. Dashin touched the back of his head and then grinned. Sister, I'll give my younger brother to you. Can you give Wen to my family as my younger brother? Fu Yun, what nonsense are you spouting? The fat woman slapped him again. Also, call me Auntie. Sister is so pretty. That's how you are. You brat. The slap on his shoulder made a loud thud. Fu Yun almost couldn't help but stop him. Dashin was used to it. He pursed his lips and looked at the gentle and beautiful sister. He said casually, Mom, can you give me to Sister Ruoruo to be your son? Anyway, he wanted a beautiful younger brother. The one at home was dirty all day and loved to cry. How could he be as cute as Wen? I think you're asking for a beating. The woman was sure that Fu Yun didn't care about Dashin's rudeness. She pulled her eldest son's ear and scolded him as she left. Fu Yun sent the mother and son away. When she returned to the house, she saw Wen squatting in the corner. Wen was a small and round ball squatting in the corner. Hold it in. I can't laugh. Fu Yun covered the corners of her mouth and walked over. All right, Wen, don't be unhappy. Brother Dashin has apologized to Wen. Wen will forgive Brother Dashin, right? Fu Yun walked to the fat ball and squatted beside him. Then she hugged him. Our Wen is the best. Wen fell into a depressed mood. He buried himself in Fu Yun's arms and twisted his small body awkwardly. He looked as if he was too ashamed to face anyone. It was too embarrassing. He was the big boss, but his position was snatched away by his opponent. How could he raise his head in front of his younger brother in the future? Fu Yun looked at Wenwen's awkward look and thought of the whole story. She could not help but burst out laughing. Wenwen immediately looked up at her, her eyes full of condemnation. Poof! I'm sorry, baby. Mommy didn't mean it. Wenwen complained angrily, how could you hurt my young heart? He was already hurt enough, but his mother still laughed at him. Fu Yun quickly pulled a straight face and admitted her mistake sincerely, it's Mommy's fault. Mommy shouldn't have laughed. Baby, can you forgive Mommy? Humph. Wenwen snorted loudly. After being coaxed for a while, she reluctantly expressed her forgiveness. Fu Yun looked at Wenwen's proud expression and almost could not help but laugh again. Fu Yun did not expect things to develop so dramatically at first. She was chatting with Aunt May and the neighbors when a few children ran over crying and said intermittently that Wenwen had been snatched away. At that time, she thought that he had been snatched away by human traffickers. She suddenly felt dizzy and almost fainted. Wenwen gradually grew up and could not lack playmates of the same age. The flower bed was relatively remote. Fu Yun was not familiar with the people in the village next to the flower bed. When she stayed there, she basically did not go out and stayed in the flower bed. And the flower bed could not easily let outsiders in, especially children who were at the age of mischievous. Do not underestimate the destructive power of children. They were young and curious. Wherever they went, not even a blade of grass would grow. Therefore, every weekend, Fu Yun would bring Wenwen back to the village to stay for 1 or 2 nights. Fu Yun was very assured that Wenwen would run around the village with a group of children. As a semi-enclosed village where everyone knew exactly how many chickens the owner raised and how many ducks the owner raised, even an outsider would be able to discover it. The furry children running around the village were all related to each other. When the adults saw them, they would look at them together. The children here ran around everywhere. When it was time, they would come out from every corner. The children were very safe in the village. In the end, her Wenwen was snatched away. Fortunately, under the adults' questioning, the children gradually made things clear. It was a false alarm. Fortunately, it was a false alarm. The villagers almost called their friends to carry hoes and sticks to chase after the human traffickers. In the end, Fu Yun went to the neighboring village with Aunt May and carried Wenwen back. No wonder the children in the village could not snatch her back. Dashin, the child who carried Wenwen away, ran home and closed the door. The group of children could not enter and cried outside the door. At that time, Wenwen and Dashin were staring at each other in the room. Fu Yun really did not know whether to be angry or laugh. After returning, Wenwen seemed to have suffered a huge blow and had been squatting in the corner of the room. If this was the anime world, there would definitely be layers of dark clouds above his head. Even when Dashin's mother dragged Dashin over to apologize, Wenwen hid in the room and did not come out. Brother Dashin likes Wenwen very much and wants Wenwen to be his younger brother. However, Mommy will not give Wenwen away. Mommy loves Wenwen the most. Bao Bao is just too popular. Bao Bao is so cute, smart, and alert. He is also the little boss of the children. Wenwen is really too amazing. Wenwen was comforted by his mother's comforting and flattering words. His depressed mood finally dissipated. He blamed himself for being too popular. Sigh, he had to bear troubles that he should not bear at his age. In order to let Wenwen completely let go of this matter, Fu Yun quickly diverted Wenwen's attention. She brought him to a meeting at night to listen to the gossip. As the village chief, Uncle May presided over the meeting. The wide ground was crowded with adults and children. They spontaneously brought their benches over from home. They wore simple and cool short sleeves and fanned themselves as they sat on the low benches and listened to Uncle May's loud voice in front of them. The content of the speech was about the rules that the villagers had to follow when the TV station was filming the program. For example, during the filming period, the villagers were not allowed to go up to watch and affect the filming effect. The children had to be restrained from causing trouble. There were also various requirements to cooperate with the filming of the program. Each person had 5 pieces of paper densely filled with words. "Oh, then we can also be on TV," the villagers discussed. "The program requires you to show reality and nature. You can do as you normally do and do what you are supposed to do. But there is one thing, you can't casually disturb others." The TV station rented a house in their village and the neighboring villages, a total of 4 villages, and lived together with the locals. Their Shangha village also had a house. After discussion with the TV station, they rented Uncle May's house. When the time came, there would be celebrities living together. The villagers did not have any objections to this. In the village, only the village chief had the highest prestige. In the same village, they were all related. Other than his family, no one else would be convinced. How could such a good thing be given to their family? The most important thing is that after the TV station comes, there will definitely be many strangers coming to our place. You have to watch the children closely and not let them run around. Uncle May kept emphasizing the important matters and made sure that everyone remembered it in their hearts before announcing the end of the meeting. Aunt May was a little flustered. She pulled Fu Yun Ruo and said, "Sigh, I don't know if the big stars are easy to get along with. Will I not film well?" Fu Yun Ruo comforted her repeatedly, "It's okay, Aunt May. Just do as you usually do and treat them as juniors who are here to visit relatives." Okay. When Fu Yun Ruo went back, she still thought, do those folk variety shows have to do so many things behind the scenes? However, this had nothing to do with her. When the time came, she and Wenwen would be in the garden. Early the next morning, Fu Yun Ruo was picking vegetables in the courtyard when she suddenly sensed that there seemed to be movement outside the courtyard. She opened the door and saw a child squatting on the ground, throwing stones out of boredom. "Big mountain." The child heard the movement and quickly stood up. He turned around and revealed a shy smile. "Sister Ruo Ruo." Fu Yun Ruo smiled. "Are you here to play with Wenwen?" Big Mountain touched the back of his head and stretched out his hand to Fu Yun Ruo. "Sister Ruo Ruo, stretch out your hand." Fu Yun Ruo stretched out her hand in confusion. Big Mountain put down Fu Yun Ruo's hand and turned around to run away quickly. His voice came from afar, "For little brother." Fu Yun Ruo looked down and saw 6 candies wrapped in glass paper in her palm. She looked up and saw that the little guy had already run away. Since it was an apology gift for Wenwen, she would leave it to Wenwen to handle. Thus, she took it into the house and gave it to Wenwen, telling her the origin of the candies. Wenwen took the candies and thought to herself, at least he knows what's good for him. He'll double the candies and apologize. He put the candies in a small bag and ran to look for Zhuang Zhuang. The other party returned the candies. He had saved his face in front of his little brother. A Different Life was a variety show promoted by Star TV station. The content of the show was to show different careers and different lives. Each episode had a career theme. The guests would become relevant professionals and show people the different lives of different careers. There were also some missions and drama in the show. The purpose of the show was to give the audience a different life experience. At the same time, it also let the audience understand the difficulties of each career. In the beginning, this show only invited second-tier and third-tier celebrities. Unexpectedly, the first episode of the show became popular. The audience unexpectedly liked this kind of show. The 6 permanent guests became big shots because of this variety show. They had endless resources and became more and more popular. However, no matter how popular a show was, there would be times when it encountered a bottleneck. The variety show had reached this juncture. The program team was ruthless and paid a huge price to invite 2 heavyweight special guests. They also cooperated with Panda Live streaming platform. This episode was presented in the form of a live broadcast, striving to be the most realistic representation. At the beginning of the show, the 6 permanent guests made a dazzling appearance. After throwing out a lot of laughs to warm up the audience, the first special guest was introduced. At the focus of the camera, a fair-skinned and beautiful woman in a white dress walked over. The warm breeze gently lifted the gauze dress, making her look like a fairy descending to the earth. The bullet screen on the screen instantly surged, and countless people excitedly commented, "Ah, goddess. She's really a fairy descending to the earth." The permanent guests were surprised and amazed. "It's Feng Shui Ruo." He Daoxing held his heart. "Ah, goddess. My heart is about to jump out." Hua Kai Kai suddenly said, "If your heart jumps out, you won't be able to live." He Daoxing. "Kai, no one will think you're mute if you don't speak." Hua Kai Kai spread her hands. "You say it as if it's not the truth if I don't say it." He Daoxing rolled his eyes at the sky. The bullet screen was filled with laughter. It was another day of being choked by the trolls. "There's a beauty who came from the heavens," Ouyang Xingheng praised the beauty with a genteel poem. Hua Kai 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 opened her mouth to speak again, but Ouyang Xingheng quickly grabbed her shoulder and covered her mouth with one hand. He continued to recite like a poet. "Her face is like Wan Yen, her eyebrows are like distant mountains." Hua Kai Kai, the audience burst into laughter again. Feng Shui Ruo smiled sweetly and walked to the front of the audience. She greeted the permanent guests and the audience in a friendly manner. Outside the scene, a black limousine was parked at the intersection. Inside the car, Yuan Xian reminded him worriedly, "This show is live. Remember to control your temper." The black car window was half lowered. Siyu saw the first female guest and frowned. Siyu clicked his tongue and smiled. "Are you sure you want me to relax and not feel disgusted?" Yuan Xian also saw the female guest and was very surprised. "From what I know, the special guest is not her." It was Xia Wanning, whom he had worked with before. If he had known that it was Feng Shui Ruo, Yuan Xian would not have agreed to this variety show. Although the industry was full of praise for Feng Shui Ruo and had a good impression of her, Siyu did not like her. Yuan Xian had also done some research and knew that this woman was not as kind as she appeared to be. Moreover, the company she worked for had always kept a respectful distance from her. It could only be said that the production team had changed the female guest at the last minute without informing them. Yuan Xian frowned. He also did not expect Feng Shui Ruo to come to this show. "It's my fault." Now that she was at the scene, he was afraid that her reputation would be damaged if she left. After all, this was a live broadcast. Yuan Xian looked for the director to understand the situation. The production team's explanation was that something had happened to the special guest at the last minute. The production team had no choice but to invite Feng Shui Ruo to save the day. Yuan Xian was not polite at all. "The production team changed the guest at the last minute without informing us beforehand. Are you looking down on Best Actor C or Apple Entertainment?" Director Peng smiled apologetically. "No, it was too rushed. We just changed the female guest in a hurry this morning. We didn't have time to inform you in advance." Director Peng was helpless. How could they reject Feng Shui Ruo? Although the industry knew that Best Actor C did not like to be on the same stage as Fang Shuiruo, he could not afford to offend Fang Shuiruo, who was backed by the Fu family and the Chang family. Yuan Axian gave the production team a warning before letting it go. They could only do this. After all, the contract did not specify who the special guest was, so the production team did not violate the contract. Siyu's public image was that of an approachable and modest person, but with her status, she was not easy to bully. They had to show their attitude and the production team had to consider carefully. Of course, Yuan Axian decided that he would never work with such a production team again. Just because Siyu did not seem to have a strong background, they had to swallow their anger. The production team was really blind. They did not even know who they should not offend. In any case, Yuan Axian had already given them a warning. If the production team only wanted to boost Fang Shui for the sake of ratings, and if they crossed Siyu's bottom line, then the production team would only have themselves to blame for what would happen in the future. While Yuan Axian was giving the production team a warning, Siyu appeared on stage. When Siyu appeared, her popularity exploded. The live broadcast platform servers almost couldn't handle it. The guest area was even more lively. They had never imagined that the production team would invite such a big shot. They had really put in a lot of effort. After all, Siyu had always kept a low profile and rarely participated in variety shows. As long as Siyu participated in a variety show, it would definitely be a hit. Sure enough, the number of people watching the live broadcast surpassed the highest in history and even showed signs of increasing. Hua Kai also stopped arguing. She held her face and screamed. Siyu. Oh. Am I seeing things? Is it really him? The others also turned into fans. They were really surprised. The production team was being mysterious this time. They did not even know who the special guest was. They only knew that it was a big shot. With Siyu's participation, their show would definitely reach a higher level. The pros outweighed the cons. Welcome, welcome, a warm welcome. They tacitly raised their hands and waved non-existent ribbons. Siyu strode down the aisle with his long legs. It was as if he was walking on a catwalk, attracting the attention of everyone. He smiled and greeted them in a friendly manner. Hello, everyone. Then he greeted the camera. Hello, everyone. Chapter 28. A Different Life was one of the most popular variety shows in recent years. With the addition of two big stars in the latest episode, it had become the most popular variety show of the year. The theme of this episode was a return to the garden. It mainly focused on leisure and traveling and doing some simple tasks. The reason was that the guests had worked hard after filming so many episodes, so this episode was mainly for them to relax. Of course, this was what the guests were told. Given the nature of the production team, they definitely wouldn't let them relax so easily. After the guests officially met and exchanged greetings, they got into the production team's car and headed to their destination. 5 cars of the same model drove in the same direction in a row, followed by several smaller cars. It was quite a spectacular sight. There were 2 guests in each production team's car. Siyu and the big brother of the permanent guests, He Ling, sat together. Although He Ling wasn't as famous as Siyu, he was the big brother of the entertainment industry. After noticing Siyu's easygoing attitude, he chatted with her very naturally. There were 6 permanent guests in the show. 2 special guests would be invited every episode to film for half a month. The big brother of the permanent guests, He Ling, was a veteran actor. He was 48 years old this year and was elegant, mature and steady. The second brother, Ouyang Xingheng, was the IQ of the group. He was humorous and liked to tell cold jokes seriously. He and the fourth brother, Xi and Su, were in the same car. The journey was long, and the two bored people in the car were seriously cracking lame jokes to see who would make the other laugh first. The two of them were cross-eyed, but they didn't make the other party laugh first. Instead, they made the audience laugh. The third brother, He Daoxing, was an entertainment star who made his debut through live streaming. He sat together with the fifth brother, Wang Huaibei, who had a straightforward personality. They had endless topics to talk about. The sixth brother, Hua Kai Kai, was the only girl in the group. She sat together with the special guest, Fang Shuiruo. Fang Shuiruo chatted with Hua Kai Kai in an easygoing manner. In the end, she was always choked by Hua Kai Kai, who was like the reincarnation of a bar spirit. Fang Shuiruo's snowball fans felt their hearts ache. They began to criticize Hua Kai Kai in the comments section for deliberately embarrassing their Shua and bullying the guests. Hua Kai Kai also had a lot of fans. Everyone loved to watch her talk about other people. When they saw Fang Shuiruo's fans attacking their own idol, the Rainbow fans couldn't take it anymore and quickly retaliated. Although Hua Kai Kai's fans were not as many as Fang Shuiruo's fans, their fans followed their idols. They were all like reincarnated trolls, and they were not at a disadvantage even though they were outnumbered. In the end, due to the bumpy road, Fang Shui seemed to be suffering from motion sickness and seemed to be in a lot of pain. This caused the snowballs to flood the bullet screen with heart-wrenching comments, but the fight was not as bloody as it seemed. At the beginning of the show, the location of the live broadcast was the county town where they were heading to. However, it was still a 5 to 6 hour drive away from where they were going. The car swayed as it traveled along the mountain road. Wang Huaibei looked at the wilderness outside the car window and said worriedly, "Is the production team trying to sell us out?" He Daoxing said calmly, "What's there to be afraid of? If they want to sell us out, they should sell Brother You first." Wang Huaibei nodded seriously. That makes sense. After a long journey, they arrived at a town that had not been baptized by industry. The streets and buildings in the town gave people the feeling that they were dusty and old. It was not as bright and beautiful as a big city. The streets were quite lively, and there were stalls and shops on both sides. At a glance, there was a dazzling lineup. The people had simple smiles on their faces. When they saw a group of strangers with different styles, they looked over curiously. However, they did not approach them. Instead, they stood and watched from afar. They curiously discussed, "Is that a big star? Oh, that young man looks so energetic. I know him. That's the great emperor of all ages." At first glance, most of the people on the street were old and young. There were almost no young people. The older people were not so fashionable as to chase after celebrities. Most of them did not like to watch the youth idol dramas that young people watched. They only liked to watch anti-Japanese war dramas and popular dramas of their time. When they watched TV, they only remembered the roles of the actors and did not know their real names. The only one that left a deep impression on them was Siyu, who had played the historical drama of the great emperor of all ages from his youth to his old age. As for the others who looked familiar, they had only seen them in advertisements. It took them a long time to remember their names. However, some young boys and girls screamed in excitement when they saw this group of famous stars. Soon, the program team brought over a lottery box. The program team found 4 villages to stay in. 2 people were in a group and they drew lots to form teams. The guests had been wary of the program team causing trouble, but they did not expect the program team to be so obedient and not do anything funny. The guests could not help but think, is the program team so conscientious this time? Did they really just let them come to the countryside for a vacation? Ladies first. They let the special guest, Fang Shui, be the first to draw lots. followed by Fong Kai Kai. After that, it was Siyu. The others also went up to draw lots in order. Everyone received a folded card with the program team's logo on the cover. He Daoxing clasped his hands together and muttered, "Heaven and earth, please bless me and my goddess." Then, he closed his eyes and held his breath. His left eye quietly opened a crack and he nervously opened the card. Xiao Ao Village. Then, he looked at Feng Shui expectantly. The permanent guests all wanted to be in the same group as the special guests and opened their cards expectantly. Hua Kai Kai took a look and opened her card. "It seems that God did not hear your prayers." He Daoxing. The two of them looked at each other and gave each other a look of disdain. He Ling asked Ouyang Xingheng, "Where are you from?" "I'm from Dao Village." Ouyang Xingheng was happy. "What a coincidence." "Me too." He teased, "It seems that we are in the same group." There were still 4 people who had not opened their cards. They were Xan Su and Wang Huaibei. That meant that the two of them had a 2/3 chance of being in the same group as Siyu or Feng Shui. Xan Su excitedly opened his card first. Shanghe Village. Xan Su clasped his hands together and said in his heart, "Siyu. Siyu. Siyu." Feng Shui looked at Siyu with a smile and teased, "I wonder if I will be in the same group as Brother Yu." Siyu smiled faintly and opened her card. Shanghe Village. Siyu's card had the words Shanghe Village, Mei Family written on it. Below it was an address. "Yeah." Xan Su jumped up. Siyu said regretfully, "It seems that I won't have the honor." Feng Shui's smile didn't change. She looked at Wang Huaibei and smiled. "I'm happy to be in the same group as Huaibei." Wang Huaibei smiled. "I'm happy too." Director Peng wiped his sweat and pretended that he didn't see Feng Shui's expression. He thought that he couldn't afford to offend the Fu family and the Chang family, but he also couldn't afford to offend Siyu, who was backed by Apple Entertainment. Director Peng said through the loudspeaker, "You have already decided where you want to go. Next, you will have to find a place to stay in the village." Each of the men had 1 suitcase, while the 2 women had 2 large suitcases. It was summer and they were all wearing summer clothes. The filming of the show would last for half a month, so the men were more casual. The women, on the other hand, had to bring skincare products and so on. Feng Shui had 2 suitcases and was worried about how to carry them. Wang Huaibei helped her carry them in a gentlemanly manner. Apart from that, each of them only had a maximum of 100 yuan. "Hey, how do we get to Xiao Ao Village?" He Daoxing mumbled. "Should we ask someone?" After splitting into groups, they quickly dispersed and went to the village on their own. "Brother Yu, are we going too?" Xan Su stood beside Siyu. He was a little nervous talking to his idol. Siyu was tall and straight. He carried the suitcase and looked around. "No hurry. Let's walk around first." Thus, Siyu leisurely strolled around the streets. Xan Su carried the suitcase and followed behind, looking very obedient. He looked left and right curiously. Siyu strolled around the streets and bought a bag of candy, 2 bags of fruit, a bag of bananas and a bag of apples with 100 yuan. The prices here were relatively low, but he bought enough. After paying 100 yuan, he didn't have much left. In the end, he only had 20 yuan left. After asking for the location of the bus, they found a car to take them to their destination. When the driver saw this group of strangers, he looked at them curiously. He was a little reserved at first, but the energetic young man spoke to him warmly and didn't put on any airs. After a while, the middle-aged driver let go of his reservations and chatted with Siyu. Feng Shui and Wang Huaibei had already arrived at Xiaohe village. Feng Shui walked in the village and looked at the filthy environment by the roadside. She frowned slightly with her back facing the camera, but quickly smoothed out. When the camera turned to her, her eyes were smiling. Not long after, a group of filthy children looked at Feng Shui and Wang Huaibei as if they were monkeys. The children in the countryside didn't have many restrictions. During the holidays, they would go out and run around. In the morning, they were clean when they went out, but not long after, they were all dirty. When they saw the strangers in the village, they were very curious. However, they had been instructed by the adults not to get close to the strangers, so they just looked at them from afar. Feng Shui laughed. It's weird to be looked at like that. I feel like an animal in the zoo. Wang Huaibei laughed. They're looking at you because you're pretty, Shui Ruo. To be honest, Feng Shuiruo's appearance wasn't the most outstanding in the entertainment industry. However, she was as bright as the bright moon and her untainted temperament made her 8 out of 9 out of 10. Feng Shui waved her hand and said, I'm just average. You don't believe me? Wait, I'll go ask. Children are the worst at lying. After Wang Huaibei finished speaking, he looked at the children and tried to speak kindly. He waved at a child in the crowd and said, Child, come here. The children took a step back and looked at each other. Then, they stared at them with wide eyes. Wang Huaibei saw that the children didn't want to come over and thought that they were afraid of strangers. He didn't force them. Instead, he said, Children, don't you think this big sister Shui Ruo is the prettiest? The children stared at Feng Shui for a long time. Then, a young child's voice said, Big sister Ruo Ruo is the prettiest. Wang Huaibei looked at Feng Shui proudly. Am I right? The children's eyes are as bright as snow. The live broadcast room was filled with comments praising the beauty of the goddess. Feng Shui's lips curled up. Being praised always made one feel better. It's big sister Ruo Ruo, not her. A small voice retorted. Wang Huaibei and Feng Shui immediately looked over. The little girl who spoke immediately hid behind her friends and timidly revealed her eyes. The big boy in front of the little girl held his head high proudly. You're not as pretty as big sister Ruo Ruo. His words caused a wave of agreement. Big sister Ruo Ruo is the prettiest. Feng Shui's smile froze. A village girl compared to her. Her name was so similar to hers. The live broadcast room was filled with laughter. That's right. The children's eyes are as bright as snow. Yes, yes, yes. The children are the worst at lying. This is the fastest scene I've ever seen. Let me tell a joke. The most beautiful goddess is not as pretty as a village girl. There were also anti-fans of Feng Shui in the live broadcast room. At this moment, they were mocked, but they were quickly covered up by the comments of the fans. Many of the fans said that the children had never seen the world and didn't know anything. They even mocked how beautiful a village girl could be. Wang Huaibei's expression was a little awkward. He didn't think that the children would be so rude. If it was recorded, it could be edited out, but this was a live broadcast. The children seemed to sense that the atmosphere wasn't right and immediately dispersed. Wang Huaibei laughed dryly. The children are still young. Feng Shui smiled indifferently and said gently, It's okay. Then she changed the topic. We're almost there, right? Yes, yes. At this moment, Siyu and Axai and Su were in a car heading to Shanghai village. Hey, is there such a poor place nowadays? Looking at them trekking through mountains and rivers, I feel like I'm living in a different world. The audience who lived in the big cities all year round always felt that it was very far away from them, even though there were often charity projects that said that they were helping the children in the mountains and helping people get out of the mountains. Now that they were watching the live broadcast, they could feel it with their own eyes. When the celebrities arrived in town, they thought that it was already remote enough. They didn't expect that the place they were going to was even more remote. Especially when the live broadcast room explained that this place wasn't the most remote place. There were many more places that were even more remote. It was more than half an hour's journey from town to their destination on a three-wheeled motorcycle. They went around a mountain road and entered a village in the mountains. When they were there, they could see mountains all around them. The villages were most densely clustered in the large, flat col between the mountains. It was said that some villages were built halfway up and at the foot of the mountains. Xiaogao village was on the mountainside, and one of the groups was going to this village. Some of them had never left this place in their lives. Most of them had gone out when they were young, but in the end, they returned to their hometown to retire when they got older. Life is much better now. In the past, before the road was built, we could only walk over the mountains to get to town. The government's policies are good. Since the road was built, it's much more convenient for us to travel. The distance has also been reduced by more than half. A bridge was built halfway up the two mountains to connect the two sides. It was about 500 meters long, so people didn't have to walk to the bottom of the mountain to continue walking. Unfortunately, their place was too remote. Even if the road was built, it wouldn't be of much use. People and cars didn't have to pass through here. There was nowhere to go, and there was nothing worth investing in the mountains. The only comforting thing was that the environment hadn't been destroyed. The air was fresh, and it was very comfortable when the wind blew on their faces. The driver sent them to the entrance of Shanghe village and enthusiastically helped to unload their luggage. Walk along this path for a while, then turn right. The third building is the Mei family's house. Thank you, brother. Siyu paid the fare, then carried their luggage and walked in the direction the driver pointed. Xan Su sighed. Brother you're amazing. You can talk so much with uncle. If it were me, I wouldn't know what to say. Their relationship instantly became closer. If they hadn't insisted on paying the fare, they would have waived the fare. Siyu's attitude was gentle. You're still young. You can learn slowly. The two of them walked one after another to the front of a farmhouse. Xan Su tried to look up. They would be staying in the house for half a month. His heart relaxed, and his face was full of surprise. It looks good. He thought that in such a remote area, their living conditions would be worse. He didn't expect it to be so good. It was a 2.5-story house with ceramic tiles on the outside and a large yard. It was neatly maintained and looked clean and tidy. The production team really did something this time. Xan Su believed that the production team really allowed them to take a vacation. Siyu didn't say a word. The yard door was ajar. Siyu didn't directly push the door open. Instead, he knocked on the door. Come in. A loud voice came from inside. Siyu pushed the door open and entered. A benevolent-looking woman came out of the house. When she saw the two of them enter, her eyes lit up. She said warmly, "Oh, you're finally here. Welcome, welcome." Siyu said warmly, "Hello, Auntie. I'm Siyu. You can call me a you." Xan Su also greeted her politely. "Hello, Auntie. I'm Xan Su. You can call me Xiao Su." "A you, Xiao Su. You can call me Auntie Mei." Auntie Mei looked at the two young men and warmly invited them into the house. "Don't just stand in the yard. Come in and rest." Auntie Mei looked at the house full of people and smiled warmly. She had been very nervous in front of Yunruo. Now that she was facing them, Auntie Mei was able to stand her ground. She completely treated Siyu and Xan Su as her nephews who had come to visit her family. She didn't feel uncomfortable at all. "Auntie Mei, this is a little gift from us. See, you placed 2 big bags of fruits on the table. You're already here. Why did you buy fruits? Auntie May said angrily and smiled even more warmly. Siyu's attitude was modest and friendly. It's my duty. I'll have to trouble Auntie May and Uncle May to take care of us during this period. Auntie May's smile became even brighter. She brought the 2 of them to the 2nd floor. There's only me and the old man at home. We'll stay on the 1st floor. If there's anything, you can look for me and the old man. This is my son's room. These 2 rooms are empty. You can stay here for the time being. Auntie May only had 1 son. When they built the house, they didn't build much. There were only 2 rooms on the 1st floor. One was for the 2 old men and the other was for storing miscellaneous items. There were only 3 rooms on the 2nd floor. After her son got married, they would be more well off. When they arrived, it was already evening. The guests had a relaxing night and had a sumptuous farmhouse dinner. Just as they were about to spend the day relaxing, a mission card was presented to them. The nearby villages became lively because of the celebrity's arrival. Everyone excitedly went to watch and discuss from afar. However, they lost interest in less than 2 days. The celebrity also had 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. After looking at her for a long time, there wasn't anything special about her. Furthermore, she was clumsy when it came to household chores and farm work. If she lived in a village, she wouldn't even be able to support herself. Furthermore, they couldn't even recognize the crops, which made them a laughing stock. Compared to the bustling outside, the flower bed was as quiet as ever. Fu Yunruo wanted to take a look at the celebrities who came here to film the show to see if they looked familiar, but she realized that her eldest brother's flower bud seemed to have mutated. For this reason, Fu Yunruo devoted all her energy to her eldest brother. Fu Yunruo's initial live broadcast of planting flowers was to cultivate mutated orchids. But later, she changed to planting more than 10 orchids. However, she never gave up on the idea of inducing mutation and tried it during the cultivation process. Unfortunately, Lao Wu and Lao Qi did not mutate even when they fully bloomed. The other few orchids also did not show any signs of mutation. Only the eldest brother's lotus petal orchid, Fu Yunruo, was keenly aware of the difference. To be cautious, she carefully observed it for 3 days. After confirming that it had indeed successfully mutated, she called Uncle Guo with a trembling voice. The moment Uncle Guo walked in, Fu Yunruo said excitedly, "Uncle Guo, can you see if the lotus petal orchid has mutated?" Even though she already had the answer in her heart, Fu Yunruo still wanted Uncle Guo to confirm it again. Uncle Guo carefully observed for a while before straightening up. He said with relief, "It has indeed mutated." Fu Yunruo was so excited that her face turned red. She had actually succeeded in cultivating it. Take good care of it. Uncle Guo walked out of the greenhouse with his hands behind his back. His footsteps were much lighter. As soon as he left the greenhouse, Uncle Guo could not help but immediately take out his phone to call his nemesis. "Hello, old Mo." Fu Yunruo stayed in the greenhouse for a while before she could not sit still and went to look for her son. At this moment, Wen was wearing a cute straw hat and was tossing around in the vegetable field. This straw hat was specially made for Wen by Uncle May. It was very suitable for her to wear and was not heavy. The brim of the hat could also block most of the sunlight. Under the exquisite little hat, her small face was flushed red and looked even more exquisite and cute. When Ruo felt that she would be causing trouble if she helped to take care of the flowers, so she decided to help take care of the vegetable field. He saw that the vegetables in the vegetable field were wilted and the ground was so dry that it was cracking, so he used the water pipe to fetch water over. He turned on the tap and used the sprinkler to water the vegetable field. The sky full of water mist sprayed above the vegetable field. He saw that the water vapor seemed to refract colors in mid-air and wondered if there would be a rainbow. Then he turned the sprinkler to the highest point in the sky. Fu Yunruo came out and saw her son playing with water happily. She hurriedly went over to turn off the tap. "Didn't mommy say that you're not allowed to play with water?" Fu Yunruo squatted in front of Wenwen and slapped his chubby little butt. "Little mischievous brat." Wenwen widened his eyes and had a sad and indignant expression on his face. "I'm not playing with water," he shouted. "I'm watering the vegetables." Fu Yunruo turned her head and saw that the vegetable field was wet. It was obvious that she had watered too much. God, could these vegetables still survive? Yes, baby is the most obedient. Mommy has wronged baby. Mommy is wrong. Fu Yunruo touched his little clothes. They were a little damp, so she carried him into the house and prepared to change his clothes for him. Mommy knows that baby wants to help mommy, but the next time you want to water the vegetables, you have to ask mommy to help you. Wenwen hugged Fu Yunruo's neck. "All right, on account of your sincere apology, I'll forgive you for spanking my butt." After Wenwen changed his clothes, Fu Yunruo happily shared with Wenwen about the mutated orchids that she had planted. Wenwen was also very happy when he heard that. Then, when he heard Fu Yunruo say that she wanted to spend more time taking care of the orchids, he tilted his head and suddenly thought of something. "Then aren't we going back to the village?" "Ah." Fu Yunruo thought that Wenwen would definitely miss her little friend after not seeing her for a long time, so she nodded and said, "Yes." Wenwen said considerately, "Mommy, you have something to do first. I can play here." Fu Yunruo heard her son's childish words and hugged him emotionally. "It's okay. Mommy still has time to accompany baby. Baby is the most important." At this moment, Uncle Guo walked in and said, "You do your thing. I'll bring Wenwen over." They would send him over in the morning and pick him up in the afternoon. There would be no delay. Fu Yunruo thought about it and agreed. Wenwen had so many little friends and elders in the village, so she couldn't be more at ease. Uncle Guo would send him over in the morning and she would pick him up in the evening. There wouldn't be much delay on the way. Therefore, the next day, Uncle Guo wanted to bring Wenwen back to the village. Wenwen thought that he hadn't seen his little brothers for a while and that he could play with them while his mother was busy during the day. Therefore, after confirming that his mother would come to pick him up in the evening, he happily agreed. Uncle Guo drove the small tram to send Wenwen back to the village. As soon as the tram arrived at the entrance of the village, Wenwen saw his group of little friends. As soon as the tram stopped, he quickly climbed out of the tram and ran towards his little friends. "Grandpa, I'm going to play." Uncle Guo responded. He had something to do in the village, so he didn't go back. Instead, he went to another place. Wenwen successfully met up with his little friends. Zhuang, little Shirtu, and the others were happy to see Wenwen. The group of little friends quickly played together. They were playing hide and seek. Wenwen couldn't think of anything else to play at the moment, so he played along. Wenwen knew that there was a hiding place that ordinary people couldn't find unless they walked out on their own. Therefore, he definitely wouldn't be caught. Wenwen hurriedly ran away with his short legs and quickly avoided everyone. Then, he hid under a wooden board behind a haystack in the old house. He only needed to estimate the approximate time to get out. Next time, he could continue to hide here. Wenwen thought that he was really too smart. Every time, his little brothers couldn't find where he was. He was the only one who hadn't been found. They all looked at him with admiration. Wenwen waited and waited. Before the time came, he heard a sound from outside. Wenwen held his breath and unconsciously widened his eyes. His secret base had been discovered. The next moment, the wooden board was lifted and a low voice with a smile was heard. "Oh, look, what did I find?" A slender hand reached over and grabbed his clothes from the back, lifting him up easily. "Whose little cutie is this?" A handsome face appeared in front of him. Wen's eyes suddenly widened. See you." Chapter 29. Siyu had come here to pack some firewood. The firewood in the kitchen was almost gone, so he took the initiative to go to May's house to get some firewood. On his way back, he sensed a slight movement near the old house. He thought that the production crew had thrown a small animal nearby for them to eat, so he cooperated and came over to check it out. In the end, it turned out to be a little cutie. Siyu sized up the chubby little ball in front of him. After making sure that he could accept the small amount of dust on him, he carried him in his arms. The little ball was soft and had a milky fragrance. His skin was snow white and his facial features were exquisite and cute. He was worlds apart from the other children he had seen recently. Siyu originally thought that he didn't have any feelings for children. Perhaps it was because he had recently fallen in love with the old and the young, so when he saw such an adorable and obedient little ball, he felt a little fond of it. "Little kid, why are you hiding here?" Siyu walked out with the child in his arms. He gestured to the cameraman to try his best not to focus on the child. Even so, the camera zoomed in on the moment when Siyu lifted up the wooden plank. The cute little doll was squatting in a ball like a frightened little animal. She looked over with her big round eyes and her chubby cheeks looked like they were carved from jade. At that moment, the screen went silent. Then, a dense barrage of comments flooded the screen. "Aw! Whose family's cutie is this? Whose family's cutie is this? I'm suffocated by his cuteness. You're not alone. You're not alone. Cameraman, hurry up and take pictures of the cutie. I want to see the cutie." This bold and red sentence attracted a lot of agreement. The fans' rebellion was just a cutie's distance away. Siyu's fans held their faces and screamed for the cutie to appear on the screen. As for Siyu, who was he? They did not know him. Wen did not know what was going on in the live broadcast room. He stayed in Siyu's arms, his little body stiff from nervousness. When he heard Siyu's question, he stammered, "Hide and seek." His trembling voice was recorded in the live broadcast room. When it reached everyone's ears, it instantly made them cry out in joy. They all adore Siyu to be as warm as a spring breeze to the little cutie. They didn't want to scare her. "Oh, hide and seek." Siyu carried the baby in one hand and the dustpan in the other. The firewood was steady. After walking for a short distance, Siyu noticed that the children around them were looking in their direction. Many pairs of eyes were fixed on the little dumpling in his hand, as if they were eager to snatch it away from him. He put the little dumpling down and rubbed his little head. When you play hide and seek in the future, remember to hide with your brothers and sisters. Such a young child, hiding in a place where no one could easily find. What if an accident happened? Siyu straightened up and walked forward with the dustpan. Wen rubbed his head and looked at the tall figure walking away. His cheeks were rosy. Siyu had actually rubbed his head. Wen's little heart was thumping. It was Siyu. So he was here to film the show. In his previous life, when he was in the entertainment industry, Siyu had already left it. He had never had the chance to meet him. Even though he was unscrupulous in his pursuit of fame, Siyu had always been someone he looked up to. He saw Siyu as his idol and hoped that he could reach his level of success. Wen had been at the bottom for many years and finally had the opportunity to become the second male lead in a drama. The drama became popular and his character was likable. He thought that he would also become popular, but because he was in the way of others, he was suppressed and kept quiet. Later on, someone edited a video of him and commented that his acting was similar to Siyu's. The company that Fu Wen signed with wasn't famous and he wasn't famous either. He wasn't trained in acting and the company didn't arrange any classes for him. In order to hone his acting skills, he specially studied Siyu's acting. He had already studied all the roles that Siyu had played. Perhaps he had imitated Siyu's acting too deeply and unconsciously revealed some of his acting skills. This gave Fu Wen's manager an idea and he suggested that Fu Wen follow this path. At that time, he wanted to stand out too much and was persuaded by his manager to start marketing his character. He deliberately imitated Siyu's mannerisms and acting style to market himself as Little Siyu. Although he was ridiculed by the public, he took advantage of his popularity to land a few dramas. In the end, he successfully made a comeback and became famous. He had the ability and acting skills to begin with. After deliberately imitating Siyu, he really had the temperament of Siyu. Although most of Siyu's fans were scolding him, Fu Wen didn't care. He wanted fame. He wanted to climb to the top and not be bullied so easily. After he won the Best Actor award, he completely got rid of the title of Little Siyu. This period of marketing had become his only dark history. Fu Wen's previous life had always been controversial. His anti-fans were polarized. Love made him live and hate made him die. He didn't care about any of this. But now that he had met Siyu in person, Wen suddenly thought of a question that he hadn't deliberately thought about. What was Siyu's attitude when he found out that someone had used him to climb to the top? Did he look down on Siyu or was he indifferent? Wen thought that Siyu must hate him. No, he probably didn't take it to heart, right? He remembered that he had spoken to Siyu's former manager at a banquet. At the time, manager Yuan had retired from managing artists and was one of the major shareholders of Apple Entertainment. Back then, manager Yuan had been quite amiable with Wen, who was still known as Little Siyu, so he probably didn't mind, right? But if Wen had been in Siyu's shoes and someone had used him to create hype, he was afraid that Siyu would be disgusted. His hand unconsciously tugged at the corner of his shirt. After Siyu and the invisible cameraman left, the children swarmed forward and surrounded Wen. Wen, Uncle Yu carried you so high up in his arms. We thought that we couldn't snatch you back. Wen, how did you end up with Uncle Yu? Wen was immersed in his own thoughts for a while before he was interrupted by a group of chattering voices. He heard the children's curious questions and replied, "He found me." Wow! Uncle Yu is so amazing. Dian clapped her hands. We couldn't find Wen. That's right. We couldn't find where Wen was hiding every time. Uncle Yu is amazing. After the children finished exclaiming, they saw that Wen was unusually silent and hurriedly asked, Wen, what's wrong? Little Shirtu asked with concern, did you think that Uncle Yu was a bad person and got scared? Don't be scared, Uncle Yu is a good person. He's a big celebrity. Dian seriously patted Wen's back like an adult comforting a child. Wen, don't be scared. Uncle Yu is a very good person. He even gave us candies. That's right. Wen perked up. I'm fine. However, at this time, he was a little worried. The children couldn't see anything and thought that Wen was really fine, so they continued to play the next round of hide and seek. The person who was looking for him covered his eyes and shouted, 1, 2. The group of children laughed shrilly and scattered. Wen also ran with his short legs. He subconsciously wanted to continue hiding in the same place as before, but his footsteps couldn't help but deviate. He remembered that the celebrity who came to their village to film the show lived at Grandma May's house. Wen couldn't help but run to Grandma May's house. On the way, an adult saw Wen and kindly asked Wen where he was going. Wen replied in a bright and childish voice, "I'm going to Grandma May's house." When he reached Grandma May's house, he stopped and hesitated for a moment, but still didn't dare to push the door open. He dawdled for a long time and quietly pushed open the half-closed courtyard door. He leaned against the door and quietly looked inside through the gap. His eyes darted around, but he couldn't see anything through the small gap. Just as he was hesitating whether to push open the door a little more, suddenly, the door was pulled open. Without support, Wen lost his balance and fell forward. Wen's heart skipped a beat. He subconsciously waved his small hands, wanting to grab something. Then, he bumped into a hard and soft pillar and subconsciously grabbed it. Then, he hugged it tightly with his two small hands. It was so close that he almost fell and rolled. The pillar moved and Wen subconsciously hugged it even tighter. His feet were suspended in the air. He lifted his two chubby little feet and subconsciously wrapped them around the pillar. Enrich, the best way to hug a thigh square root. I also want such a cute baby to be my leg accessory. At this moment, I don't know who to envy. You had long noticed this little ball. His big round eyes looked curiously inside. As soon as he opened the door, he lost his support and fell over. He fluttered like a duckling and his small hands grabbed onto his pants. You could have moved his feet away, but he didn't know why. When he felt the pull of his pants, he pressed down on his pants to prevent them from being pulled down. Feeling the soft touch on his feet and the weight of his chubby body, he lifted his feet and shook them. How much longer do you want to hug me? Wen looked up and saw Siyu looking down at him. His chubby face turned red. He hurriedly put down his feet and hands and took a few steps back. I'm sorry. Wen said nervously. He secretly looked up at him, then quickly lowered his head and stared at the ground. He thought embarrassedly that he was really embarrassed. Siyu raised his eyebrows and squatted down. Little guy, come here. Wen raised her head and glanced at him. She hesitated and did not go forward. Are you afraid of me? He hurriedly shook his head. He wasn't afraid. It was just that Wen didn't have the confidence to face him. Siyu said again, come here. Wen walked over with small steps. Siyu held his armpits with both hands and stood up to lift him up. Ah! Wen's entire body soared into the air, and his vision quickly rose higher and higher. He was even taller than Siyu. Wen's eyes widened. His chubby little feet moved in the air a few times, then he looked at Siyu quietly. At this moment, Aunt May walked out of the house. When she saw Wen, she smiled like a flower. Wen, you're back. She walked over and smiled kindly at Wen. Your mother even called me. She was about to look for you. Aunt May was happy to hear that Ruoro had asked her to take care of Wen when she returned to the village to play. When Wen heard about his mother, he immediately looked over. What did mother say? You have to eat lunch and sleep after that, Aunt May said with a smile. She repeated Fu Yun's instructions. Grandma will make your favorite pork with egg rolls. Wen's eyes lit up. He said softly, thank you, Grandma. Siyu saw that Aunt May knew the child and carried him with one hand. Xan Su, who was in the kitchen, heard voices in the courtyard and walked out curiously. When he saw Siyu carrying a delicate child, he was delighted. Brother Yu, where did you kidnap this child from? Xan Su walked in front of the two of them. Looking at the little fellow's healthy red clouds and bulging milk, his fingers were itching to pinch. He raised his hand, wanting to pinch it. Siyu raised his hand to stop him and said sternly, you can't touch a child's face. Really? Xan Su looked at him reluctantly. Okay. Wen looked at Xan Su with some curiosity in her eyes. There was another benefit of going back to the past. She could see many celebrities who had disappeared or semi-retired 10 or 20 years later and were now popular. He remembered this Xan Su. Later on, when he participated in the show, he even covered one of his classic songs. "Aunt, I'll take Wen to buy soy sauce then." Aunt May saw that Wen did not reject Cu and looked at him with sparkling eyes. She knew that Wen liked him very much, so she agreed happily. Okay. Cu lifted Wen and put him on his shoulder before walking out of the courtyard steadily. Wen held Cu's shoulder with one hand and looked around curiously. It was the first time he sat on someone's shoulder. He was not worried about falling off at all. He only felt very safe. It was the first time he saw the scenery from this angle. The familiar village felt very novel. Although his mother often hugged him, she was still a weak woman and could not put him on her shoulder. At this moment, Wen felt a little emotional. Perhaps this was the feeling of a father. However, he quickly discarded this thought. There was no need for a third person in the family. It was enough for him and his mother. He did not need that scumbag man. Wen lowered his head and looked at Cu's side profile. He pursed his lips and said softly, "I'm sorry." Cu turned his head and looked at the little boy. He saw the anxiety in his eyes and smiled. "It's okay." He thought that Wen was apologizing because he had accidentally bumped into him. He did not know that he was referring to something else. He thought that this little boy was very sensible despite his young age. "Then, are we friends?" Wen's voice was filled with anticipation. At this moment, he only thought that if he could become friends with his idol, his life would be more complete. He would never do anything bad in this life. He wanted to be an open and above-board person. He wanted to be his mother's pride. Cu's voice was strange. "You want to be friends with me?" Wen nodded seriously. "Yes." However, Wen had forgotten that he was still a little boy who was not even 4 years old. He wanted to be friends with Cu. It was hilarious. Of course, it was also because the person who proposed to be friends with them was a little boy. If it had been an adult, Cu's fans would have scolded him for trying to ride on their idol's popularity. Shameless. However, at this moment, I also want to be friends with the little cutie. Count me in. Yes, yes. If Brother Yu doesn't want to be friends with you, we'll scold him. Cu's voice contained a hint of laughter. Okay. Wen immediately revealed a big smile. However, after he was done laughing, he remembered that he had to be more reserved and not reveal his emotions. He quickly restrained himself. He could not help but cover his mouth with his hands. His eyes curved into beautiful crescents and he could not help but curl his legs. He proudly thought about how he was friends with his idol. On the way, he met his friends. They asked Wen if he still wanted to play hide and seek. Wen said loudly, "I don't want to play anymore. I want to eat." When the other children saw this, they stopped playing and went home to get ready to eat. They would continue playing with Wen in the afternoon. The two of them quickly arrived at the village's small store. Wen saw Grandpa May, who often gave him snacks, and greeted him sweetly. Second, Grandpa May chuckled. He immediately took out a milk candy and stuffed it into Wen's hand before placing it into his trouser pocket. Cu bought a bottle of soy sauce. When they went back, Wen did not want him to carry him. Although he liked him, he believed that they were friends of equal status. How could he let his friend carry him? Thus, he righteously rejected him. Then, he volunteered to help carry the soy sauce. He thought that soy sauce did not match his idol's style, so he would do the hard work for him. Siyu looked at Wenwen's small body and placed the soy sauce bottle on the ground. Wenwen carried it with one hand, but he could not lift it. Wenwen was surprised. Was the soy sauce bottle that heavy? A glass bottle of soy sauce only weighed about 1 kilogram. He hugged the bottle with both hands and lifted it with great difficulty. He took 2 steps, but perhaps because of the weight, he wobbled. Siyu, who was half squatting beside him, propped his chin up and watched his new friend carry the soy sauce bottle like a little penguin. He could not help but reach out to poke him. His wobbly body immediately lost its balance and sat on the ground. Wenwen sat on the ground with the soy sauce bottle in his arms. His small face was still in a daze. The audience in the bullet screen laughed and condemned Siyu for being so naughty. Didn't he see how difficult it was for the child to walk? Siyu could not help but laugh. This child was quite funny. At times, he seemed mature beyond his age, but at other times, he was completely like a child. In the end, Siyu carried the child home with the soy sauce bottle. In other words, it was the child who brought the soy sauce home. Wenwen nestled in Siyu's arms, his face as red as a monkey's butt. He had embarrassed himself in front of his idol. During lunch, the live stream was turned off. Siyu and Xansu were more relaxed. Xansu ate in big mouthfuls and complained, "This program team is too much. The missions are so difficult that I'm about to break down." Not only did they have to complete the missions, but they also had to pay attention to the jokes. Hence, they had to act more exaggeratedly and be careful not to say anything wrong. Generally speaking, no variety show was easy. Especially since they were in the countryside, they had never done farm work or raised poultry. They were exhausted from the missions. Wenwen ate the delicious egg dumplings and listened to the gossip of the program team. He felt the same way. That's right. Variety shows, especially those that involved physical labor, were very tiring. Every time after the show ended, he would be so exhausted that he did not even want to move a finger. Aunt May did not forget to put some vegetables in his bowl. Wenwen, you can't just eat meat. Eat some vegetables. Wenwen instinctively wanted to act coquettishly. However, Grandma May's stance was not as firm as his mother's. Grandma May surrendered when he acted coquettishly. Then, he met Siyu's eyes. He put his chopsticks to his mouth and bit off the vegetables. After chewing a few times and swallowing them, he said seriously, "I'm actually not picky about food." Yes, he could not let his idol think that he was a picky eater. Okay. Siyu nodded and used the serving chopsticks to pick up some vegetables for Wenwen. He filled his small bowl and said seriously, "Then eat more." Xansu snorted and covered his mouth to stifle his laughter. Wenwen was speechless. Why did he feel that his idol's personality was a little mischievous? No, it must be an illusion. Chapter 30. After lunch, Siyu and Xansu chatted in the courtyard. After a few days of interaction, Xansu was very natural in front of Siyu and spoke casually. Wenwen took a stroll in the courtyard to digest his food while listening to their conversation. After half an hour, Aunt May came over to take Wenwen to his room for a nap. Wenwen had a very regular schedule. Every day, he would take a nap half an hour after lunch. Uncle May and Aunt May were naturally worried about Wenwen going to the old house alone. Wenwen claimed that he was an adult and wanted to sleep alone, so he took a nap in Aunt May's son's room. Wenwen was very familiar with the May family's house, so he was used to it. Although he was still thinking about his idol downstairs, his biological clock made him fall asleep quickly. His little tummy rose and fell, and he started snoring. When Wen woke up, the house was quiet. He rubbed his eyes and climbed out of bed. He opened the door and went downstairs. Aunt May was the only one in the courtyard. Siyu and Xan Su were nowhere to be seen. Wen's eyes wandered around. Where are Uncle Siyu and Uncle Su? Aunt May laughed and said, they're out on a mission. Aunt May had specially gone to see how the TV station filmed the show, but these celebrities were just doing what they were used to doing. She didn't understand what was so interesting about it, so she didn't pay any attention. Wen knew that he couldn't disturb them. He regretted it for a while. He wanted to spend more time with Siyu, but he wasn't in a hurry. He heard that they would be filming for half a month. Then, he hopped out to play with his friends. Before he could jump out of the courtyard, Wen suddenly froze. He squatted down and covered his head, as if he was too ashamed to see anyone. He had been a child for so long that his thinking had become that of a child. Why didn't he think that Siyu was doing a live broadcast in the morning? How could he filter out such a huge live streaming device and only have eyes for his idol? Was he in the picture? How many shameful things had he done? Then wouldn't he be publicly executed? He had even shamelessly said that he wanted to be friends with Siyu. He would probably be mocked and scolded by his fans just like in her previous life. Wen buried her face and curled up like an ostrich. She refused to admit that she was the silly one. The shouts of his friends came from outside the courtyard. Wen looked up. Forget it. Anyway, he had long been trained to be thick-skinned. Those curses would not hurt him at all. Moreover, his mother did not allow him to watch too many electronic devices. He did not even have enough time to watch dramas every day, so how could he have the time to watch variety shows? If he didn't look, he wouldn't be able to see anyone scolding him. He would just pretend that they didn't exist. In any case, he was still young. He could talk about the future in the future. Maybe in 10 or 20 years, people would have already forgotten about his dark history. After Wen figured it out, she continued to run out and replied in a cute voice, I'm coming. The group of children in the village soon gathered together and it was very lively. Not long after, a group of children ran towards them. Dili and little Shirtu looked and saw that it was Dashan from the neighboring village and more than 10 of his followers. Little Shirtu and the others thought that Dashan wanted to snatch the children again, so they quickly surrounded Wen and hugged her tightly. They looked at them vigilantly. Wen, who was squeezed so tightly that she almost could not breathe, was speechless. What are you trying to do? Dili shouted, I'm warning you. Wen is from our village. You can't snatch her. Beat the hell out of you. Dian clenched her small fists and shouted fiercely. I won't snatch Wen, Dashan said as he glanced at Wen, who was completely covered. Dili and the other children were still very vigilant when they heard this. They thought that Dashan wanted to make them lower their guard and then snatch Wen away again. Wen went through a lot of hardships and finally squeezed out of the protective circle. There was a layer of sweat on her face and her cheeks were rosy. Dili and another older child stood on either side of Wen like guardians and stared at them with bright eyes. Wen looked up and asked seriously, what are you doing here? Although Dashan had returned the candy many times over, it did not mean that Wen did not remember that Dashan had carried her away. Dashan looked at Wen and his eyes lit up. I've already given you the candy. Will you bring me along to play? Wen was speechless. Wait, that candy was the membership fee, not an apology gift. Dashan suggested, let's play together. The more the merrier. The children were very proud. Wen won't play with you. Dashan tilted his head. Why? He puffed out her chest and said, you're all dirty. Wen won't play with dirty children. You don't wash your hands. Your clothes are dirty. Your faces are dirty too. They spoke one after another. Dashin turned to look at his younger brother and compared them to the other side. Indeed, the children there were dressed very neatly and clean. Their hands and faces were very clean. On his side, the young ones had snot hanging from their noses. Their faces looked like they had not been washed for years. Their hands were also black and their clothes were dirty too. Wen won't hold hands with children who don't wash their hands. Dian Dian raised her head proudly. In order to be able to hold hands with Wen, she asked her grandmother to wash her hands every morning, noon, and night. Every day, her hands were washed until they were white and tender. Then we'll go wash up too. Dashin ordered and the group of children rushed into the river. Dili and the rest saw them running away and followed. The children rushed into the river like a swarm of bees. The water level of the river that ran through the entire village was very low and the current was very gentle. Even children of 4 or 5 years old could stand steadily in the water. The group of children were simply and roughly washing their faces, hands, and feet. Someone accidentally splashed water on another person, and that person splashed back. Not long after, the group of children started to have a water fight. Dili and the rest watched and were ready to join in. Then, they also ran over and started a water fight. The sound of a large group of children gathered together seemed to be able to shake the sky. Wen, not long after, a wet Dashin walked in front of him. Wen. He reached out and held Wen's small and soft hand. A cold and wet feeling came over, and Wen subconsciously raised her head. Dashin said confidently, "I've washed my hands clean." Then, he said straightforwardly, "I don't want to be the boss anymore. I'll be your younger brother. In the future, you'll be the boss of our lower river village." Wen. After he ruled the children of Upper River Village and became the boss, he used his cuteness to commit murder and unified the neighboring village. When Dili heard Dashin's declaration, he immediately accepted happily. "Okay, you recognize Wen as your boss. We'll be good brothers in the future." Wen, I don't want to. It was already very tiring to take care of the children of one village. Did he still want to take care of 2 villages' children? It was too tiring. However, the excited Dili and the rest did not hear his protest. They happily accepted the children of the neighboring villages. It was in the children's nature to love excitement. The more people there were, the more excited they were. Not long after, Wen was also affected by their emotions. He threw away his awkwardness and happily played together. Unknowingly, an afternoon passed. Wen had a smile on his face and his cheeks were rosy. Seeing a young and beautiful woman pushing a small tram at the intersection, Wen's eyes lit up. He happily ran over with his short legs. "Mommy!" Fu Yunruo responded sweetly from afar. When the other children saw Fu Yunruo, they happily surrounded her and kept calling her sister Ruo. Fu Yunruo responded with a smile and spoke softly to the children. "Thank you children for taking care of Wen so well. Sister Ruo, are you and Wen still coming tomorrow?" Little Shirtu asked reluctantly. Fu Yunruo looked at Wen's red face and said with a smile, we'll come when we're free." Only then did the children disperse in satisfaction. Wen had already climbed to the front seat of the small tram and held the front of the car with her small hands. Fu Yunruo pushed forward and asked with a smile, "What did Wen play with the children today?" Wen recounted the games they played today one by one. Then, she proudly raised her head and said proudly, "They're so childish. Actually, I don't like to play these games." Fu Yunruo couldn't help but laugh. Yes, Wen is so considerate. She patiently played with the children. Wen is so great. As they spoke, they arrived at the entrance of the May family's courtyard. "Come, let's go say goodbye to Grandma May." Only Aunt May was at home in the house. Fu Yun Ruo shouted from outside the courtyard. Aunt May, who was wearing an apron, came out of the kitchen. "Ruo Ruo, you're here." "Grandma." Wenwen jumped out of the car and looked inside. It seemed that Siyu and the others hadn't returned yet. "Aunt May, thank you for taking care of Wenwen." "Hey, it's not hard. I didn't watch much. The child went to play in the village." Aunt May waved her hand. "She just went to take a look from time to time. Then I'll take Wenwen back to the flower garden first." Aunt May hurriedly said, "Aren't you going to eat first?" "No, it's done over there." Fu Yun Ruo still remembered that there were other people at Aunt May's house. "Besides, it's not convenient for you." Aunt May thought about it and didn't insist. She only said that she must eat at home next time. Fu Yun Ruo agreed. After chatting for a while, Fu Yun Ruo left with Wenwen on the small tram. The car had just driven for about 10 meters when Siyu, Xi and Su, and the others walked over from the other side. Before they entered the courtyard, Xi and Su stretched his neck and sniffed hard. "Aunt May, what delicious food did you make? It smells so good." Aunt May was still at the entrance of the courtyard. When she heard this, she smiled and said, "I made braised pork trotters." "Wow!" When Xi and Su heard this, he almost drooled. Siyu looked around the courtyard and didn't see that cheerful little figure running out. "Where's Wenwen?" "His mother brought him home," Aunt May said. Then she turned around and went back to the kitchen to continue cooking. Xi and Su followed beside her and kept saying sweet words, making Aunt May beam with joy. Siyu tilted his head and glanced outside. At this moment, the back of the tram that he had inadvertently caught a glimpse of was no longer on the path. Wenwen chattered along the way. He used his cheerful little voice to share the day's events with Fu Yun Ruo. He had too many things to tell his mother. His mouth only stopped for a moment when they were eating. After that, his little mouth was still chattering until he lay down on the bed and was about to go to sleep. He originally wanted to mention to his mother that he might be recorded in the live broadcast, but after thinking about it, he decided not to. He didn't want his mother to worry. If his mother found out, she would definitely go online to watch the show's replay. If she saw many netizens scolding him, wouldn't she be so angry that she cried? His mother might even ask the production team to delete or censor the video. Although his mother loved to share about him on the live broadcast platform, most of the time it was written or spoken. Occasionally, his recent photos would be censored to protect his privacy, when decided to skip this detail. In the end, he couldn't help but talk about his idol. "I saw Siyu." Fu Yun Ruo gently knocked his forehead. "You have no manners. You should call him uncle." Fu Yun Ruo originally wanted to say brother, but she suddenly remembered that if she remembered correctly, Siyu was a few years older than her. She remembered the name Siyu. It was probably because in the original novel, the female lead had faintly seduced him but failed. In the end, because the companies they belonged to opposed each other, their relationship became bad. Siyu could be said to be the mountain that pressed down on the heads of the male and female leads. He was also the only person who had never suffered in the hands of the male and female leads. If he hadn't suddenly retired and completely left the entertainment industry, the male and female leads wouldn't have become legends of their time. Of course, this was what Fu Yun Ruo concluded from the obscure descriptions in the novel. After all, it was a novel about the female lead. How could there be a detailed description of things that made the female lead suffer? Fu Yun Ruo thought that this was the configuration of a hidden big boss. But after sighing, she threw it to the back of her mind. After all, this had nothing to do with her. Wen touched his forehead. All right, it was Uncle Yu. He remembered that he hadn't said goodbye to Uncle Yu today. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.